Chapter 221 Solve Sasori. Naruto. Everyone shouted in unison. At this time, the three-generation cage puppet of Sasori of the Red Sand exerted its force again, and a large piece of iron sand condensed into a dark cloud that shrouded the sky above everyone's heads. Iron sand rain. Immediately afterwards, thousands of needle-shaped iron sands suddenly shot out of the dense iron sand, rushing towards the crowd like a drizzle. Futon, wind style, Itachi. Tamari suddenly fanned a hurricane upwards, and the hurricane instantly blew all the iron sand and rolled it backwards. Even so, half of the iron sand that was ubiquitous had already fallen to the ground. Just when everyone thought that Sasori of the Red Sand couldn't do anything about him, the iron sand that stayed in midair suddenly turned into a wide iron plate, like a huge black curtain covering everyone's heads. For a while, there was darkness in everyone's sight. At this moment, there was a sudden shock under everyone's feet, and the next moment, the soil was lifted up one after another, and the vibration made everyone stand unsteady. This is iron plate. Neji looked down and saw the big iron plate that had been turned out of the soil under his feet, and sent himself and others up. At this time, everyone had come to their senses, but they saw everyone standing on an incomparably huge black iron plate, echoing the iron plate in midair. "No, leave and go back to the ground," Tamari exclaimed. She already understood Sasori of the Red Sand's intention, which is to crush herself and others with these two iron plates. Moreover, the two iron plates made of iron sand are extremely hard. Even if Sakura's chakra-enhanced strength hits them, they can't break it. In the nick of time, a huge attraction suddenly formed between the two iron plates, rapidly approaching each other. For a time, the strong inertial acceleration made it difficult for everyone to move. Seeing that everyone was about to be crushed, Naruto's voice suddenly rang out. "Don't worry everyone, with my Mokuden wood style here, I'll be fine." As soon as he finished speaking, his hands quickly hand-sealed, and the next moment, a wooden stake was born from between his hands. On a large iron plate. Dong dong dong. The wooden stake slammed on the iron plate, making a dull sound, but it also used the wooden stake to support the two iron plates, resisting the mutual attraction. Everyone let out a slight sigh, quickly left the iron plate, and returned to the ground. "Naruto, thanks to your Mokuden wood style for saving us, otherwise we'll be meat patties." Tamari rejoiced and asked again, "Why did you come here? How is Gaara?" "I'm here for Gaara's business. It seems that the battle here can't be dragged on. Granny Chio, now I want to intervene in the battle and end it as soon as possible." Naruto nodded and looked at Chio. Chio looked at Naruto hesitantly. Originally she wanted to solve this misguided grandson herself, but now I'm afraid things are not so simple. She sighed. "Sixth Hokage, since you want to intervene, feel free to hello, your grievances will be handled by you juniors." After speaking, she glanced at Sasori of the Red Sand who was manipulating a puppet not far away with a complicated expression, and withdrew from the battlefield with a sad expression. Naruto glanced at everyone and said, "Now, don't interfere, I want to get rid of him quickly." "Hey, Naruto," Tamari opened his mouth and shouted, wanting him not to go it alone, but when Naruto waved his hand, he said lightly, "Tamari, just stay on the side and watch. I have 3 minutes." After he finished speaking, he didn't say any more, and rushed towards the body of Sasori of the Red Sand. Sakura reminded behind him, "Naruto, watch out for his poison." As soon as she finished speaking, countless poisonous needles and hidden weapons appeared in front of Naruto's eyes, but he ignored them and threw several Hiraishin kunai straight forward. The next moment, the poisonous needles were about to touch him. When he was in the body, he had already turned into a golden light and disappeared. The few Hiraishin kunai shot forward along different trajectories. Naruto used the technique of Hiraishin to constantly shuttle between the kunai. Sasori could not grasp his movement at all. When he used a hidden weapon to shoot Naruto's after all the kunai were knocked out, Naruto was already very close to him. At this time, he had to retreat quickly and control the 3 generations of Kage to attack. Then, Naruto simply ignored the attack of the 3 generations of Kazekage, and his body speed was full, chasing Sasori of the Red Sand all the time. He was obviously faster than Sasori of the Red Sand, but Sasori of the Red Sand had 3 generations of Kazekage puppets, and as soon as Naruto caught up with him, the huge iron sand fell on him. With a bang, the ground cracked, the gravel flew up, the iron sand flew up again, and the figure of Naruto had already disappeared in place. Suddenly, countless thick tree trunks suddenly emerged from the smoke, spreading rapidly around, most of which were entangled directly towards the body of Sasori of the Red Sand. Facing this mighty Mokuden wood style, Sasori of the Red Sand didn't dare to be careless at all. He tried his best to dodge backwards, dodging the restraints of Mokuden wood style. At this moment, a golden light suddenly flashed behind the 3 generation Kazekage puppet on the other side, and Naruto had appeared behind him. Big Ball Rasengan. Rasengan the size of a head suddenly appeared in Naruto's palm and pressed hard on the back of the 3 generation Kazekage puppet. Boom! With a deceitful surrender, the puppet was directly smashed into pieces by the powerful spiral energy. Sasori of the Red Sand couldn't help but be shocked. How did he appear behind the puppet? Suddenly, he saw a Hiraishin kunai interspersed on a branch in the same place. This is where the 3 generations of Kazekage stood just now. It turns out that he used countless Mokuden wood style to force the opportunity to flee directly, and secretly used another tree trunk to bring the spatial coordinates behind the puppet. At that time, I was so busy running away that I couldn't notice this detail at all. The 6th generation of Hokage, your mind is really good. Sasori of the Red Sand said lightly. However, your opportunistic method will stop here. Next, I will show you more confusion. Scene. Saying that, Sasori of the Red Sand suddenly took out a scroll and pulled it away. At this moment, the corner of Naruto's mouth twitched slightly, and in the next instant, a golden light flashed. Sasori of the Red Sand groans. Kai. Blood spurted out, and Sasori of the Red Sand stared blankly at the vital spot on his chest, and an extremely ordinary kunai pierced through the flesh and blood. It's impossible. How did you know my weakness? Sasori of the Red Sand stared back at Naruto in disbelief. The scroll in his hand slammed to the ground, scroll silently for a few laps. His weak voice sounded again, how did you fly behind me? Chapter 222 Teach the Art of Life. Naruto let go of kunai, let him take a few steps forward and fall down, and said indifferently, do you think I don't have time to lay down spatial coordinates? Sasori of the Red Sand stared at him with wide eyes, also puzzled. Naruto smiled slightly and pointed to an inconspicuous small tree trunk under his feet. I used Mokuden wood style to wrap the spatial coordinates in it, of course you can't see it. He squatted down and broke the tree trunk. Opened, revealing a sharp Hiraishin kunai inside. As for how I saw through your vitals, I'm sorry I can't tell you. Sasori of the Red Sand was stunned for a while, and then heaved a long sigh, as this Hiraishin's art. It seems that, in the future, no one can match you. Battle was over. Sasori of the Red Sand was dead. Granny Chio looked at her grandson's corpse, stepped forward and put it back into the scroll together with Mukuro. The 3rd generation of Kazecage's crippled Mukuro stood up and bowed to Naruto, the 6th generation of Hokage, this time for your trouble. Quote. Naruto smiled and shook his head. This is my mission. Gaara is my friend. He and Deidara took him away. Naturally, I won't let them go. At this time, Sakura, who was beside him, ran over. Naruto, you really only spent less than 3 minutes just now. It's amazing. Of course, Naruto's speed is now unmatched. Temari responded slightly proudly. Naruto shook his head and laughed. He waved to the crowd and said, okay, we still have work to do, and now I'll send you back to Konoha with Hiraishin right away. Come on too, Granny Chio, Gaara's situation may need your help. With that said, he made everyone lean against each other, and then activated the Hiraishin technique by himself. Condensing chakra slightly, Naruto closed his eyes and silently activated Hiraishin teleportation. In a trance, everyone only felt that the scene in front of them flashed, and the next moment appeared in front of them was a familiar office. Exactly the Hokage office. After Naruto delivered the crowd, he let out a slight sigh and didn't have time to explain, so he went straight to the medical room. Everyone came to the infirmary, and it was only a short while later that Tsunade and Shizune were trying their best to save Gaara, but no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't make Gaara recover in the end. The arrival of Naruto's group made Tsunade stop their rescue. Then, after Tsunade explained Gaara's situation to everyone, Temari couldn't help sobbing softly. Naruto wrapped her body around her, hugged her in his arms, and comforted her silently. At the same time, he turned his gaze to Chiyo, who was thinking slightly beside him. Granny Chiyo was slightly surprised when she noticed that Naruto's eyes seemed to see through. Everyone fell silent. Suddenly, Chiyo sighed slightly, stood up and said, "Let me try it. Tsunade, although I hate you, your puppet master's nemesis, but I still admire your medical ninjutsu, but now, I will let you see, far more than your art of saving people." Everyone couldn't help but look at Chiyo mother-in-law in confusion. Chiyo smiled indifferently and explained, "Strictly speaking, my technique is not medical ninjutsu, but life ninjutsu. It is to transfer one's own life force into another person's body, and exchange one's own life for the other's life. Technique. Mother Chiyo," Temari exclaimed in surprise after hearing her explanation. And everyone looked at her in shock, and were moved by his thought of sacrificing oneself to save others. At this moment, Naruto suddenly said, "Mother Chiyo, wait. What's wrong?" Chiyo turned her head to look at Naruto. She always felt a little incomprehensible to this young boy. Living at her age, she was basically a savvy person. However, for what Naruto gave her the impression still has a different feeling. "Maybe I can find a way to save Gaara without sacrificing myself." "Huh, what did you say?" Chiyo looked surprised, and everyone looked at him curiously. Naruto smiled slightly and said, "Mother Chiyo, if you don't mind, please teach me the life ninjutsu and let me perform this ninjutsu." "No way, Naruto will die like that," Shizune shouted before Naruto could finish speaking. Everyone nodded. Naruto spread his hands. "As a descendant of the Uzumaki clan, my life force is much stronger than that of ordinary people. If I guess correctly, life ninjutsu needs to be endowed with a certain amount of its own life force. The opponent's vitality technique, if you put it this way, the key to whether the life ninjutsu can save people is the amount of vitality. Chiyo mother-in-law, I think you are old, there is not much vitality left now, right?" Granny Chiyo froze for a moment. "It is true that my life is coming to an end, but it is not a problem to save Gaara." "But then you will also die." Naruto stepped forward and said sincerely, "To be honest, I am also very curious about life ninjutsu. It is a pity that only you can know such a magical ninjutsu." "What happened?" Chiyo's mother-in-law was silent. Life ninjutsu was originally developed by her, but it also belongs to the Sand Ninja village. Although Konoha and Sand Ninja have been married, they have not yet reached the level where they can teach all the secret techniques. However, she thought about it again and couldn't help laughing at herself. Chiyo, do you still see the problem with this narrow and old way of thinking? The reason why there is so much hatred in this ninja world is because there are too many people who think like you. What is a life ninjutsu? The peace of the ninja world, the hope of the future, maybe all depend on this young man. What does it have to do with teaching him?" Thinking of this, Chiyo smiled relievedly, nodded and said, "Okay, I promise to teach it to you. But I can only give you an hour. If you can understand the true meaning of life ninjutsu, maybe you will carry forward this technique." "Not necessarily. Thank you so much, Granny Chiyo." Naruto bowed to her and smiled. Granny Chiyo's open-mindedness reminds Naruto of the stubborn elders in Konoha. Compared with her, those old guys are too narrow-minded. "It's nothing, after you learn it, you will use this technique to save Gaara, and then the old man will thank you for your help." Chiyo smiled lightly. "Let's find a quiet place." Naruto nodded, and without saying much, took Chiyo directly to a secret room upstairs. After closing the door, Naruto directly divided dozens of shadow clone. Let's get started. Chapter 223 Pass on Life. An hour later, Naruto finally appeared in front of everyone anxiously waiting in the medical room. All eyes fell on his face. How's it going, Naruto? Tsunade asked. Naruto smiled slightly. No problem. Call. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. At this time, Naruto had walked up to Gaara, stretched out his hands and pressed it on his chest, closed his eyes, and the green light slowly rose from his hands. It's amazing. The 6th generation of Hokage. I have never seen a ninja with such outstanding talent as you. Chiyo's voice then sounded, watching Naruto perform life ninjutsu. Her face was full of amazement color. Within an hour just now, she explained the profound meaning of life ninjutsu to Naruto. Naruto divided dozens of shadow clones, and each shadow clone listened intently. After she finished speaking, many shouted. People thought about it at the same time, and after a while, the guy just frowned slightly, and immediately said he understood. My own secret ninjutsu was actually learned in just 1 hour. Chiyo had to doubt the veracity of what he said, so he immediately asked him to come over and demonstrate. I didn't expect it to actually show up. In fact, for ninjas at the level of Naruto, although life ninjutsu is a brand new field, the Grandmaster uses time and space ninjutsu, enchantment, sealing, and various escape techniques to control his own power to ultimate. It is not a big problem to learn this life ninjutsu. With the common understanding of many shadow clone, he quickly researched the key. At this time, it was the first time he used this technique. When he condensed the power of life, he only felt that the energy in the cells of his body was continuously concentrated in the palm of his hand. Naruto knows that these are the so-called life force, and these life force concentrated in the palm of his hand are guided into Gaara's body under his control, repairing a little bit, stimulating his cells. The loss of vitality makes Naruto feel a little weak, but on the one hand he has made a promise to save Gaara and will never give up. On the other hand, he also very much wants to explore the mystery of this vitality. He remembered that in the plot, after Kabuto became a perfect immortal, he was able to give ordinary material life, and there might be some connection between the two. With the continuous output of vitality, Naruto's forehead also saw a slight sweat, and everyone couldn't help showing a worried look on their faces. Temari asked Chiyo's mother-in-law quietly, "Mother-in-law, will Naruto really be fine after he uses this technique?" Chiyo nodded. I heard that the life force of the Uzumaki clan is very strong. Even if some life force is lost now, it should slowly recover, but I think he should be weak for a while. The people who raised their ears were slightly relieved when they heard the words, and looked at Naruto with all their attention. However, standing aside quietly opened by Akugen's Hinata, who was silently watching Naruto, and she couldn't help but be full of worries. She could see that with the output of Naruto's vitality, his chakra flow speed was also slowing down a little bit. It seems that this life force will also affect the operation of chakra. Naruto, why are you doing this? If your vitality cannot be recovered, wouldn't your future strength be greatly affected? Hinata sighed secretly in his heart, but at the same time, he was deeply fascinated by Naruto's great feelings of sacrificing himself to save others. Finally, Gaara groaned softly and groaned, faintly awake, and when he first saw Naruto, he couldn't help but be stunned. Naruto, why am I here? Gaara stood up and asked suspiciously. Gaara, you're finally awake. Temari walked over with a smile on his face, tears in his eyes. After Gaara woke up, everyone was happy, and everyone had a relaxed smile on their faces, while Naruto was a little tired. Although he thought his vitality was strong, it didn't matter if he lost a little bit, but at this time, this week it still made him very uncomfortable. Hinata came to him and gently supported him. Naruto, are you all right? Naruto was stunned for a moment, and when he turned his head to see Hinata's caring expression, he couldn't help being moved slightly, shook his head slowly, and smiled, I'll go to rest first. At this time, everyone also noticed Naruto's strangeness. Seeing how weak he looked, they all stepped forward to ask him to rest for a while. "Naruto, thank you so much." Tamari's face was filled with joy, and he ran over and gave him a hard kiss. Sakura's face was full of admiration. Only Tsunade and Shizune were staring at him in deep thought. Although they had been infatuated with medical ninjutsu for many years, although they did not know much about life ninjutsu, they were still very clear about the concept of vitality. If there are no major risks and side effects when using it, then it is really unbelievable. Although Naruto looks a little weak now, but the two girls who know him very well take a closer look and see that Naruto's eyes no longer have the bright blue light in his eyes, and the whole person also gives people a sense of decay. The breath, this feeling made them very uneasy. When Hinata helped Naruto back to his house, Shiro couldn't help but exclaimed, "Naruto, what's wrong with you? Why does your face look so ugly?" Naruto smiled and waved his hand. "It's okay, I'm a little tired, let me rest." Beisheng grabbed Naruto's arm before, and used her unique method to sense it slightly. Her face couldn't help but be startled. But immediately she let go of Naruto and let him go back to his room to rest. "Sister Bai," Hinata called her. Bai's face was full of anxiety. "Hinata, what happened?" Naruto wasn't injured at all, and the chakra in his body didn't wear out much. Why did the chakra aura suddenly weaken? Hinata's eyes were also full of worry. She sighed softly, and told her what happened just now. After hearing it, Bai was greatly distressed. "I didn't expect Naruto to actually do this, at the expense of his own life to save others. This is really stupid," but at the same time, she was deeply impressed by his actions. Such Naruto made her more nostalgic and obsessed. In the room, Naruto sat cross-legged, closed his eyes, sank in his mind, and carefully checked the state of his body. He also found that the speed of chakra's operation has become much slower at this time, and he no longer has the strong momentum as before. He couldn't help but smile bitterly in his heart. It seems that the side effects of life ninjutsu are really not small. Chapter 224 Absorb the life force. But he didn't have time to mourn and regret. Since things have been done, he won't spend extra time to regret it. It's all useless. A real strong person will never be defeated by a little setback. At this time, Naruto is looking for a solution to this side effect. The side effects caused by the loss of life force are very obvious on the body and chakra. After Naruto sensed his own situation, he tried to condense the life force in the body again and condensed it in the palm of his hand. In the middle, the green light suddenly radiated out. Suddenly, his body shook violently. The next moment, he noticed that there were countless green light spots flying in the space around the palm, and these green light spots were so faint. It's so faint that you won't notice it if you don't look closely. Are these the forces of life? Naruto closed his eyes tightly, although he was very weak at this time and wanted to fall down and take a good sleep, but he knew that if he really fell to sleep, he would probably miss a golden opportunity. Therefore, he tried his best to concentrate his spirit, using his body as a medium to fully feel the surrounding nature and space. Slowly, he seemed to feel that he had entered a wonderful realm, which was the same as the realm he entered in Itachi's Tsukuyomi space, but with a different feeling. At the same time, there seemed to be countless green light spots invisible to the naked eye in the surrounding space that were rapidly approaching his body, and then all submerged into his body. The green light spots converge into trickles, nourishing the cells, meridians, and chakras of the past. Naruto felt this power that was both familiar and unfamiliar, and his heart trembled. This is the force of life. It is the force of life. These are not their own life force. It comes from the life force of nature. It is the power of life that is everywhere and inexhaustible. He felt that he was immersed in the feeling of being nourished by the natural vitality, and also realized the incomparably vast nature of nature. Is this the force of natural life? After a long time, Naruto finally recovered from this wonderful fairyland, but found that he is now in good spirits and his body is full of vitality, even more than before. Even the chakra has become stronger. Naruto couldn't help but jumped up from the bed with joy, and laughed 3 times. The powerful chakra shook the whole room. Outside the door, Bai and Hinata didn't know what was going on, and hurried in. But seeing Naruto's faceless laugh, he couldn't help being stunned. Naruto, who was overjoyed in his heart, directly dodged to the 2 women, put his arms around the other, and gave them a fierce kiss on the lips. The 2 women couldn't help but be stunned. Bai was nothing. Seeing Naruto looking so excited and happy, she also smiled sweetly. And Hinata lowered her head all of a sudden. Her face brightened. Yuhi, it was the first time she was kissed so fiercely by Naruto in front of others. For a while, her heart was extremely chaotic and shy. His hands kept rubbing the corners of his clothes, and his delicate body trembled slightly. Naruto, are you so energized so suddenly? Are you all right? Bai asked softly, hugging his arm. Naruto laughed. Shiro, this time I made a lot of money, life ninjutsu. It's really interesting. Naruto, what are you talking about? Shiro was a little confused, but Naruto was hurt by life ninjutsu. Why do you say life ninjutsu is very interesting now? However, she didn't think about it. Just now she could feel the power of Naruto's chakra, which was even more powerful than before. Since Naruto is so happy, it is obviously not a bad thing. It seems that his side effects have been resolved. Naruto, I'm going to cook for you. I heard that I just came back from my mission, so I must be hungry. Bai Wen gently arranged his clothes for him and said softly. Being mentioned by Bai, Naruto is really hungry, and he really hasn't eaten anything during the mission. At this time, he couldn't help but scream. Bai Pucci smiled, got out of Naruto's arms, and ran to the kitchen to prepare. Since Bai moved in, the original single room has become a double room, and there is also a small living room, kitchen and washroom. At this time, Naruto is sitting in the small living room, and his heart is quite warm. However, he suddenly noticed that Hinata, who was beside him, was shrinking in his arms, fascinated, with a cute face full of Yuhi. Hinata, what's wrong with you? Naruto finally noticed her strangeness and asked aloud. Ah, Hinata was finally awakened, and with a soft cry, she finally jumped away in shame. Naruto, she kept rubbing the corners of her clothes with her hands. Her face was flushed, Yuhi's mouth was dry, and those pure white eyes stared straight at her feet, daring not to look at Naruto. Naruto frowned slightly, wondering why Hinata became so shy again. Although I hadn't seen her for a few days, it wasn't like that. He couldn't help but stepped forward and grabbed Hinata's little hand and said softly, what's wrong? Hinata, why are you so shy in front of me? Hinata was holding his small hand, his body trembled slightly, and his heart was both joyful and complicated. But after biting on Kiba, he was still gently freed. Naruto was stunned for a moment. Hinata suddenly raised her head, her white eyes were full of complicated eyes. Naruto, why are you being so gentle with me? I will be troubled if you do this. I can't spoil your relationship with Sister Temari. Emotions. Naruto was stunned for a second, and then he finally understood in his heart. He couldn't help shaking his head and laughing. He stretched out his hand and gently scratched her cute little Chong's nose, saying, what do you think? Hinata, although Temari and I have a marriage relationship, but this can't hinder the relationship between me and you, right? Look, aren't I and Bai also very good? Besides, you're so cute and beautiful, and I like you very much. As long as I like you, you like me, we can be together. Naruto, Hinata couldn't help being startled by his remarks, staring blankly at his bright smiling face, and suddenly felt the urge to cry. Finally, Hinata threw himself into Naruto's arms with a wow, and sobbed softly. Naruto, that's great. I thought you'd ignore me again. Woo. These days, I've been hearing about your marriage. I'm so uncomfortable. Woo. Naruto, don't you leave me. Chapter 225 Understand. Naruto hugged Hinata's soft body, listening to her soft sob, sighing slightly, and comfortingly, Hinata, I won't ignore you. Hinata raised Yuhi, pretty face and looked at him, her eyes full of nostalgia and obsession. Naruto, I don't know what to do with myself. After learning that you and Sister Temari are married, my father is currently preparing for my future. It's a matter of fact, our Hyuga family is generally intermarriage within the clan. After the father announced the news in the clan, many elders came to tell him that they were kissing. What should I do, Naruto? Naruto couldn't help but stunned. He didn't expect Hiashi to marry Hinata, and instantly he couldn't help but get angry, hugged Hinata tightly and said, Hinata, I will never let you marry someone you don't like. Hinata's face Yuhi nodded lightly. Well, I only like Naruto. Looking at the girl who was full of longing and love for him in his arms, Naruto couldn't help but feel a sense of responsibility. No matter what, he must not let these girls who like him sad. No matter how rough the road ahead, how repulsive the world is, he never give up. As for Hiyashi's practice, although Naruto is very unhappy, it is also human nature. Konoha village basically practices monogamy. Although looking at the entire ninja world, there are many polygamists, but in the Konoha environment it is very rare, and it is not recognized by others, especially my Hokage. Once he does something that goes against the rules of others, he will definitely usher in a lot of crusades. However, these Naruto don't care. After gaining strength, no matter how much everyone disagrees, or how much they despise them, as long as they can be happy and happy. Naruto never gave up on this. It didn't take long for Bai to finish cooking and come out. After learning about Hinata's affairs, Bai comforted her very understandingly, and at the same time glared at Naruto secretly, blaming him for harming another innocent girl again. However, although Bai looked a little resentful on the surface, he still didn't feel any blame in his heart. It is normal for such a good person to have so many girls like Naruto, but Naruto did not hurt any girl's feelings. Which is also enough to see his tenderness and consideration for girls. Under Bai's comfort, Hinata soon stopped worrying, and after learning that Bai's sister didn't mind her at all, she was also in a happy mood. The two women's personalities were similar, and they soon became friends. One slice. Eating and sending Hinata away, Shiro closed the door and let out a soft sigh, stepped forward and lightly hammered him on the chest, looked at Naruto angrily and said, the debts you have caused are getting more and more. Hinata is the eldest lady of the Hyuga family, a famous family in Konoha. As Hokage, you have to handle this matter well. Otherwise, it will have a negative impact on the entire village. Naruto grabbed her palm with a smile, kissed her on the cheek, and said with a smile, what's wrong? Shiro is so good with Hinata, aren't you jealous? Why should I be jealous? He gave a slight look on his face and glared at him. It's over. You won't be jealous anymore. Shiro doesn't mean you don't love me, right? Naruto exclaimed exaggeratedly. With a soft cry of "Baya," he immediately leaned over nervously. I hate it. Of course I love you the most. You bastard still doubts me. But in the next moment, Naruto had already embraced her delicate body in his arms, his lips instantly covered her soft lips, and he kissed her bitterly. Bai was stunned for a moment, then his whole body relaxed, his hands automatically climbed onto his neck, his eyes were slightly closed, and he stuck out his tongue to let him ask for it. Gradually, Naruto hugged Shiro, kissed her, and walked to the bedroom. After the spring tide, Naruto exhaled with a refreshing breath, and Bai Z, who was naked, lay on his chest, her delicate body trembled slightly, and her eyes were full of spring water. She gasped and said, Naruto, you are about to kill me. After saying a word, she was so tired that she just wanted to close her eyes and take a good sleep. Wait, Naruto looked at her pretty face, opened his mouth to say something, and a tender white jade finger was already standing beside his mouth. Naruto, I know what you want to say. No matter what happens to you in the future, I will always be by your side. Those girls who like you, I think they will understand you, so you don't have to worry about me being jealous or something. As Hokage, you have too many things to take care of. If I want to distract you, you are not a qualified lover, so go ahead and do it. Bai whispered softly, and fell asleep against his chest. Naruto caressed her smooth back with both hands, and was moved by something in his heart. Bai was so considerate and gentle, and he was so lucky to have her. In the evening, Gaara and Chio, who had already woken up, came to say goodbye to Naruto. At this time, Naruto and Shiro were already up, and the two came to the village gate together, and said goodbye to them with Tsunade. As Kage, what Gaara needs most now is to return to the village to stabilize the situation, so Naruto did not hold back. The two reached out and shook hands at the gate of the village, looked at each other with a smile, and made a separation. Granny Chio looked at the two of them, her wrinkled face was filled with a gratified smile, and she whispered softly, "The future of the ninja world may really be changed by these two children." To Gaara, everyone did not disband, and they were going to celebrate the successful completion of this mission together. Hokage from him, and they are more looking forward to the future development of the village. Together with Shiro, Tsunade Shizune, Sakura Tamari, Neji, Shino, Kiba, and Sayu and Yugao who had been in the dark, and then they called for Hinata, after which everyone waited and went to the largest barbecue restaurant in Konoha, started eating and drinking to celebrate. At the celebration, everyone was amazed at the speed of Naruto's recovery. They thought it would take 10 days and a half for him to recover, but he didn't expect that he would be full of energy after disappearing in the afternoon. Facing the curious eyes and questions of everyone, Naruto did not reveal that he had mastered the ability to absorb the power of natural life. Although everyone was his own, he did not need to disclose his secret to the public. After all, he could use it. Life ninjutsu saves people and replenishes the power of life in a very short period of time. This is equivalent to having an infinite way to save people. This is definitely a sensation in the ninja world, and it will definitely attract attention. Troubles come from all sides, and maybe people who come to the door for help will be able to collapse the gate of Konoha. After all, this is a way of saving people that goes beyond medical ninjutsu. Chapter 226 Rorin Mission. The next day, everything was back to normal. Naruto was sitting in the office working on documents. Shiro was standing behind him, serving tea and water, pinching his shoulders and beating his back. Shizune was standing beside him as secretary. Tsunade had been busy these days. "No, I have already gone to the casino." Sayu and Yugao are still hiding in the dark as always. Looking at the beautiful Konoha village outside the window, Naruto felt a sigh in his heart. He was a once ordinary person, but everything has become so extraordinary after crossing the road. Although it is not in modern times, he is already very satisfied. Located at the peak of the ninja world, becoming Hokage, with a large group of subordinates who support him, and several girls who like him, this kind of life is probably the envy of most people. However, Naruto knew that in this surface calm and comfort, there was a huge crisis hidden behind it. Akatsuki is already on the move, and he believes Gaara's incident was just an accident. As long as he keeps Yugito's second tail, Akatsuki cannot achieve this goal. However, in order to be cautious, Naruto is still prepared to strike first. Shizune, immediately send a letter to the major ninja villages to hold a meeting of the 5 shadows. He suddenly stood up and said, Shizune was taken aback for a moment. "Naruto, why is there a meeting of the 5 shadows all of a sudden?" Under normal circumstances, the 5 shadows meeting must be held when important matters are discussed. Naruto looked at Shizune and nodded. "That's right, it's the 5 shadows conference. I don't think we can go on passively. Akatsuki better get rid of it as soon as possible. His current strength is almost the same, and he has already mastered the Akatsuki members' weaknesses and attack methods. Once the battle with Akatsuki is officially launched, he will definitely have the advantage. Moreover, preparing for the alliance early now is also a preparation for Akatsuki's counterattack in the future. Although, Naruto does not know whether the 5 great ninja villages will agree under the current peaceful situation. But he still decided to give it a try, even if he couldn't convince it. At least it made the villages vigilant, which would also be a big problem for Akatsuki to catch the tailed beast. After all, No matter how strong Akatsuki is, he can't fight against the entire ninja world, let alone when everyone is already prepared. Okay, Naruto, I'll do it now. Seeing the serious expression on Naruto's face, Shizune nodded and left. However, it didn't take long for Shizune to run back in a panic, holding a document in his hand, and hurriedly handing it over to Naruto. Naruto, something big has happened. The intelligence department got the news just now that a man from Sandin village called the 100-footed Missingnin went to where the dragon veins of the Rorin ruins are located. Quote. Naruto was stunned. Dragon vein power. Missingnin 100 feet in Sand Ninja Village. This theatrical version came so fast. This time, Naruto decided to go out on his own, because he knew that the so-called seal of dragon vein power was set by the 4th generation, and he had inherited the sealing technique of the 4th generation, and this task was also suitable for him to do. Before he left, he separated a Mokuden wood-style clone to sit in town, and then took Yugao Sakura, and the tracking team Shino, Kiba and Hinata along with him. Rorin Ruins, where the dragon veins are located. This country was once very prosperous, but then it perished because of the war, and now there is only one ruin in the desert. And in this site, there is the so-called Gate of Dragon Power. Legend has it that the power of dragon veins contains endless chakra. If anyone can get it, they can get endless power. Naruto just laughed at this statement. The so-called dragon veins, although powerful, are definitely not that exaggerated. And he firmly believes that no matter how powerful the power is, it will never be of much use in the hands of an ordinary Jonin like Beizu. Because there were clues from the intelligence department before, with the long-distance search ability of Kiba and Shino, the whereabouts of each other were quickly discovered. Naruto, he is fleeing in the direction of the Land of Wind. Kiba said. Naruto pondered slightly. The Rorin ruins are in the desert of the Land of Wind. We must rush there as soon as possible, otherwise it will be troublesome for him to attack the dragon veins. Yeah, everyone nodded after hearing this. Under the accelerated progress, a group of people soon entered the desert area of the Land of Winds. And Hiriko's breath was getting closer. Naruto, I saw it. That guy should be 100 feet. Hinata said, opening Byakugan hard and looking forward. 8 kilometers away. 1 o'clock. Everyone's spirits could not help but be shocked, and there was a burst of acceleration under their feet. 100 feet. Stop. Naruto shouted, and a thin figure in front of him stopped. His head, he looked at Naruto with gloomy eyes, and Beizu smiled coldly, the 6th generation of Hokage. I didn't expect you to stop me in person. It's an honor to be prepared. The power of the dragon veins is not something you can use. I advise you to give up. Naruto took out the Hiraishin kunai and smiled faintly. In this way, maybe I can spare your life. Ha ha ha, the 6th generation of Hokage, you're just a little brat. What's so great? After I get the power of the dragon veins, it won't be difficult to conquer the world. Look, the power of the dragon veins will be used by me. Beizu laughed wildly, his face crazy. Go! Naruto waved his arm and rushed forward, and others rushed towards him. But Beizu didn't go to fight at all, and stepped back again and again, trying to distance himself from Naruto and the others. Naruto snorted softly and was about to raise his hand to use the Hiraishin technique when a violent explosion suddenly came from the side. Dangerous, this place is full of detonating talismans. Hinata's Byakugan suddenly found the trap in front of him and immediately reminded him, but at this time Beizu had detonated all detonating talismans on the ground, and the bursts of explosion shock waves forced everyone to can't get close. When the smoke cleared, everyone saw that Beizu was squatting on the ground not far away, and there was a strong light on the ground. This is the power of the dragon vein. No, this guy found it. Naruto shot Hiraishin kunai forward, aiming straight at Beizu. However, Beizu paid no attention to Naruto's suffering. He directly pressed his hands on the radiant ground, and suddenly complex runes poured into his body along his arms. The power of the dragon veins. I'm here. Beizu laughed wildly with excitement, and at this time Naruto's Hiraishin kunai was worthy of reaching him. With a swipe, the golden light flashed, and Naruto's figure appeared in front of Beizu. In his extremely astonished eyes, he slammed into his body. Blood spurted out, but Naruto's face changed slightly, because at this time there was an incomparably powerful force surrounding the two of them, and a violent force poured into Beizu's body, and Naruto was caught by Naruto. The stab wound is also recovering quickly. Haha, this is the power of the dragon veins. Just when Beiji was about to become invincible, the surrounding time and space suddenly had a strange distortion, and an infinite power of time and space suddenly appeared. At the same time, a huge beam of light rose from the ground and spread rapidly, drowning Naruto and Beizu together. Seeing this scene, everyone could not help exclaiming, "Naruto!" When Zuoyu saw that the situation was not right, he didn't care about anything and rushed directly into the beam. Boom! The huge beam spread out and disappeared in a moment. Zuoyu stood there blankly, no one was there. Chapter 227 In the bath. The densely packed towers stand up to the sky. Naruto was wrapped in layers of powerful control force, unable to move. It seemed that the squeezing force from the entire surrounding space made him feel his own insignificance. He fought with all his strength and resisted with all his chakra, but in the end he was unable to defeat the endless power of time and space, and he lost consciousness in discomfort. I don't know how long it has passed, how much time and space have passed through. Naruto felt that he was conscious, the control of the body was still there, and the chakra in the body was not lost, which made him feel a little certain. After all, the uncertainty of traveling through time and space is very high. It is possible to wake up suddenly and find that you have become a child again, or that you have become another person again. There are many such things. At this time, Naruto didn't know where he was, but he felt that the surroundings were wet, as if he was wrapped in warm water. It was as if I had stepped on something, the smooth ground, and it felt like I was in a bathhouse. Thinking of this, Naruto was slightly startled. The next moment he suddenly opened his eyes, just wanted to stand up, but heard a vague voice beside his ear. "Your Majesty, the bath water is ready, please start bathing." Then, Naruto heard the queen seem to be humming, and the footsteps approached. Naruto suddenly understood that he was in someone else's bath. This is bad. I don't know why I woke up in the bathtub when I traveled through time and space, and it happened to be where people were going to take a bath. It was really embarrassing. The art of Hiraishin. Naruto sensed it carefully, but he couldn't sense any coordinates of himself in that world at all. It seemed that space ninjutsu couldn't jump in time. And at this time, he has never set up space spells in other parts of this world, and now he can't even run. As the 6th generation Hokage Naruto, he didn't dare to get out for a while, and hid under the surface of the water with his eyes open. The next moment, a vague figure came to the bath, and even though it was in the water, Naruto still saw the other person's figure. Roaring Queen Sarah, with long Yuhi-colored shawl hair, was slowly taking off her robe, revealing her tender and beautiful body. Although Naruto couldn't see the specific content, her chest was beginning to take shape, and her perfect S-shaped curve was enough to judge the queen's charm. Seeing her lightly lift her jade feet and slowly step into the water, Naruto couldn't help but sigh and closed his eyes resignedly. As the water swayed, Naruto suddenly felt a soft and smooth touch covering his face. Immediately afterwards, the figures of the two of them couldn't help but stop in place, and they maintained it for 2 seconds. Finally, a scream broke the silence. Naruto stood up instantly, rushed out of the water with his upper body, stretched out his palm, and dragged the screaming Queen Sarah into his arms from behind, and died at the same time. "Cover her mouth." "Shish, don't bark," Naruto called in her ear. Hearing Naruto's voice, Sarah's body trembled in shock, her wonderful eyes widened, filled with panic-stricken eyes. What exactly is going on? Who the hell is this guy? Why did he suddenly appear in his own bath? Moreover, just now, he actually sat on the head of others. At this moment, he is still in his arms. How on earth did this man appear in the bath? This place is heavily guarded, and no one can come in at all. Sarah now even has a heart that wants to die. As the queen of such a prosperous Roran country, her body is absolutely sacred and inviolable. A body that has never been seen by outsiders for more than 10 years is actually being held in the arms of a strange man at this time. The most important thing is that he is still naked. You can't even see who he is. Naruto also felt Sarah's fear and panic, and he had no choice but to use the softest voice to explain. My lady, I'm so sorry, I don't know why I appeared in this place, I accidentally offended you. You, please keep quiet and go out. Sarah's delicate body continued to tremble, and Naruto's words had already become a peerless, demonic tone in her ears. She began to struggle fiercely. Even though her mouth was covered by the man behind her who couldn't see his face, she still didn't want to give up resistance, and used all her strength to resist. However, how can Sarah's strength be compared to Naruto's? No matter how hard she struggled, how terrified she whimpered in her throat, in the end she still couldn't break free from Naruto's embrace. Seeing her swearing to the death, Naruto couldn't bear to smile bitterly and said, My lady queen, stop struggling, I'll let you go, I hope you don't scream again. After he finished speaking, he let go of his arm, and Sarah rushed forward immediately, rushing to the side without caring about anything and wanting to leave the bath first, and at the same time shouted, Someone. Naruto stood in the pool, shook his head slightly, and sighed bitterly in his heart, he couldn't wash it out. Sarah came to the pool in a panic, and just wanted to leave the bath, but suddenly realized that there was no movement behind her. She turned her head to look when she was stunned for a moment. The next moment, when she saw Naruto's figure, she couldn't help but stay for a while. This guy is so handsome. It doesn't look like the kinky in the impression at all, the devil. You, who are you? Sarah asked suddenly after seeing that Naruto was not chasing to her disadvantage. Seeing her calm down slowly, Naruto felt a little joy in his heart, and hurriedly stepped forward and said, My name is Uzumaki Naruto, and I belong to Konoha. Ah, don't come here. But before Naruto finished his introduction, Sarah, who saw Naruto approaching, immediately screamed and slapped Naruto's face with a slap. Snapped. Naruto stretched out his hand and squeezed her slender white wrist into his palm. Calm down, I'm not a bad person. Sarah didn't believe it at all. He pinched his wrist, and the jade legs in the water kicked up and attacked Naruto's lower part. Naruto clamped her legs together and firmly restrained her little feet. Calm down. He secretly wiped his sweat. Worthy of being a queen, she was so chaste. Let go of me, you thief. Let me go. Sarah was restrained with one hand and one foot, and she couldn't move, and began to struggle. At this time, Naruto's delicate body with white flowers swayed, irritating his mouth was dry. At this moment, Queen Sarah, who was struggling violently, slipped, and she suddenly sank into the bath. Naruto was slightly startled, and quickly reached out to fish, wrapping her arms around her slender waist and holding her firmly in his arms. Chapter 228 Sarah's Shame. Because of the panic, Sarah sank into the body and drank several sips of water. At this moment, just after being picked up by Naruto, she leaned on his shoulder and coughed violently. Naruto couldn't help staring at the pair of jade and milk on her chest. As she kept coughing and shaking violently, accompanied by the splash of water, she looked extra tempting and seductive. Although it was extremely embarrassing at this time, after seeing such a beautiful scenery, Naruto couldn't help but react, and his body bulged high, pressing against Sarah's smooth belly in the water. When Sarah finally recovered, she realized that she was naked by his waist and leaned into his arms. The heat of that big hand touching her waist made her uncomfortable. However, what made her even more embarrassed and panicked was the feeling that the raised object under Naruto's crotch was directly pressing against her lower abdomen. The heat was even hotter than the warm water in this bath. In an instant, her beautiful face rose to Yuhi, and her soft lips trembled slightly. Let me go, let me go. Naruto also realized his gaffe, and quickly let go of her infinitely beautiful body. At this time, someone finally rushed in outside the door. It was a few maids. They rushed over when they heard the queen's cry for help. Your Majesty, what's the matter with you? However, when they came to the bath, they saw Sarah sitting quietly in the bath, looking at the water with an extremely moist expression. No, it's fine, a cockroach appeared in the water just now. Sarah said softly. Huh, it's fine, Her Lady Queen, we scared us to death, we thought something had happened to you. Since it's just a cockroach, just fish it out, or we'll give you some more water to wash. Just once, the maid replied. No, you go down first. Sarah hurriedly said. After the maids retreated, a head quietly appeared in the water. It was Naruto. He looked at Sarah quietly, and suddenly asked, Why don't you let me be taken out? Sarah felt uncomfortable by him, and snorted when she heard the words, You can get out now. Stinky cockroaches. Naruto was scolded by her. Knowing that he was embarrassed, he didn't refute anymore. Thank you, goodbye. Before leaving, Naruto turned his head and thanked him. Who let you go? However, just as Naruto was about to leave, Sarah suddenly stopped him and hummed, You violated the majesty of my queen, do you just want to leave without any punishment? Naruto froze slightly. Then what do you think, Madam Queen? Sarah snorted lightly, and he said, I didn't think about it, you can't go now anyway. I'll talk about it when I figure out how to punish you. In fact, she herself was very surprised why she had such a reaction. She was horrified at first to this guy who suddenly appeared in her bath, but later found that he did not substantively violate her, but just kept explaining. I have already decided in my heart that he really has something to hide. Moreover, she had never seen such a handsome and good-looking boy, especially the short golden hair and the blue pupils, which reminded her of the dazzling sun and the vast blue sky. Naruto was a little speechless after listening to Sarah's words, so he nodded and said, Okay, I'll wait for you to wash out. After he finished speaking, he quietly performed the most common clone technique, creating an illusion on the spot, with his back to Sarah, and his own body jumped out of the room and ran outside. As soon as he left the queen's room, Naruto came to a long corridor. All kinds of lights were hung on both sides of the corridor, and there were all kinds of elaborate patterns under his feet, which made the place extremely luxurious. Naruto couldn't help but sigh how luxurious this Roran was. However, Naruto walked a long corridor without finding any guards. It can be said that this does not meet the standards of a prosperous country at all. After quietly sneaking for a while, a bright light suddenly appeared in front of me. It was a gate. Naruto rushed out, and there was a towering tower building and ubiquitous lights all around him. Looking up, it was a blue sky, and looking down, it was a crisscrossing street, and a sky above the sky. Bridges between various towers. He couldn't help but be amazed by this bustling scene. However, the prosperity here gave him a dreamy and unreal feeling. It seemed that there was a lot of lack of vitality here. Yes, angry. Naruto narrowed his eyes slightly and carefully observed this bustling city. Soon, he discovered the reason. Among the pedestrians who came and went on the street, a large part of them were just empty puppets. Moreover, almost all of the soldiers who were constantly patrolling around had no breath of strangers. All are manipulated puppet troops. It seems that Bezu still used the dragon veins to develop a large army of puppets here like the original plot. Sarah put on her clothes and groomed her appearance, calmed down her fluctuating state of mind, and walked out of the bath that was cut off by the curtain. Seeing the figure in front of her with her back turned to this side, Sarah was slightly curious in her resentful eyes. Who is this guy? Until now, I didn't know his origin and intentions, but seeing how he was standing there very seriously at the moment, my guard against him was slightly lowered. Hey, Uzumaki, Naruto, you can turn around now. Sarah called at him. However, after waiting for a long time, there was still no response. Hey, did you hear that stinky cockroach? Sarah cried again. Naruto. Sarah waited for more than 10 seconds and still saw that he was ignoring and stepping on it. She suddenly got angry and walked towards him boldly. Hey, say something. Sarah stepped forward and gently poked him with a jade finger. Boom. But at the next moment Naruto suddenly turned into a white smoke and disappeared into the air. Sarah was startled, not knowing what was going on. She hurriedly took a step back, looked confused, looked around and shouted, "Uzumaki Naruto, you come out to me." However, she still couldn't call Naruto out after calling for a long time, but it attracted the shouting of the maids, thinking that something had happened to her. A long time, Sarah didn't wait for Naruto to appear, and couldn't help but stomped her feet angrily. Silver Kiba bit her tightly and muttered, "Do you want to run away if you offend me? It's not that easy." Chapter 229 Mukade's Conspiracy. At this time, Naruto was walking around the city of Rorin, and his silhouette turned into a stream of light, easily avoiding the patrols of all parties, and launched an investigation on this towering tower. In fact, his main goal is to find Beizu, kill him, and persuade Sarah to seal the power of the dragon veins. The mission of the original plot was to kill the 100-footed seal dragon veins, but I felt that it was a little different from the original plot. Not only did I suddenly appear in the bath, but since I started searching the city for a long time, there was still no trace of those 4 generations. Haven't they come to Rorin yet? Or has the plot changed? Anyway, Naruto currently has no way. He had to prepare to find a place to solve the problem of food and lodging. However, just as he was about to leave the place, the horn in the city suddenly rang. A hurried voice echoed throughout Rorin. "Someone who is going wrong has entered Rorin, please be careful." At the same time, a large area of the surrounding puppet soldiers began to speed up their search, scurrying around the city. At Naruto's current speed, these puppet soldiers would never be able to find out, and even if they were accidentally discovered, they would never be able to catch up. Therefore, Naruto is not worried. Tension in the city riot. He stood alone on the top of the highest tower, watching the panoramic view of the entire Rorin. Spectacular. Bustling. Naruto sighed deeply. He didn't understand, why did such Rorin fall so quickly in the war? In the end, only a desert was left. At this moment, a slightly familiar voice came from below the tower where Naruto was standing. "Your Majesty, did you say that the man's name is Uzumaki Naruto?" "Yes, that hateful guy. Help me catch him. I'm going to interrogate him myself." Sarah's resentful voice came out. "Okay, Madam Queen, I'll do it for you." "Well, thanks for your hard work, Mukade. Oh, by the way, don't hurt him if you catch him. I have something to ask him." Sarah's voice said again. "As ordered." Naruto hid his breath and quietly approached the 2 voices. After a while, he finally saw a middle-aged man with a big belly. He had a fat body and a bloated face. It was Sand-Ren Missingnin. "It's just that this guy traveled here 6 years earlier than me, and in 6 years, this guy actually changed from a skinny guy to a fat guy." Even though he knew the plot, Naruto couldn't help laughing secretly when he saw him. Quietly followed Mukade. Naruto did not let him find out, but after his twists and turns, he finally entered an underground secret room. There are countless advanced manufacturing machines, and beside these machines, a group of men are coming and going in slack spirit, doing coolies for the work of these machines. And among those machines, one by one puppet soldiers were continuously produced, with the same production efficiency as an assembly line. Naruto frowned when he saw it. Sure enough, this guy Beizu was using these people to work hard for his puppet army. Mukade looked at the progress of the production, nodded with satisfaction, and instructed his subordinates to continue to take care of these coolies, then stepped on the elevator and went up. He murmured, "6th Hokage, even if you come. At this time and space, there is nothing I can do, my puppet army is about to be completed." Naruto quietly withdrew from the underground room without disturbing anyone. Back on the ground, he fell into thought. Now Sarah trusts Mukade very much. If she stops Mukade now, the power of the dragon vein cannot be completely sealed. After all, only Queen Sarah's lineage can completely seal and open this power, even if she has mastered many sealing techniques, for the dragon vein still out of reach. However, the problem now is that the image of Mukade's loyal servant is deeply ingrained in Sarah's heart. Even if she talks to her, she can't change her mind at all. Maybe then she will deceive and turn against her with Mukade. So, after pondering for a while, Naruto decided to wait in the city for the moment when Mukade reveals himself. He has the confidence to take control of the situation. The next day, I found Naruto who stayed in a hotel for one night. After waking up, I continued to go outside to inquire about the wind, and by the way, I looked for the whereabouts of the 4 generations. Mukade, who could not find Naruto's trace, was always uneasy, and he also noticed something from Sarah's eagerness to see Naruto. It seemed that the two seemed to have some connection, but he asked about it. Sarah, however, flatly denied it, and he faltered and kept covering it up, which further deepened his suspicions. It seems that the 6th generation of Hokage has indeed come into contact with Queen Sarah. In that case, Naruto was walking on the street, seeing that most of the people coming and going were well-hidden human-shaped puppets. He frowned secretly in his heart. A city that is not alive is just puppets. No matter how prosperous it is only a puppet. It makes you feel dark and gloomy. As for the Mukade who made this place, that is, the 100 feet, Naruto has made up his mind to kill him. At this moment, the crowd in front was full of hilarity, applauding, cheering, and cheering one after another. Naruto approached the past, and after a closer look, he found that most of them were puppets, and on the tower above, he saw 2 familiar voices appear. It's Mukade and Sarah. Sarah, wearing a gorgeous robe, stood at a high place and looked at the cheers of the people below, with a sincere smile on her face. She turned her head to look at Mukade and said gratefully, "Uncle Mukade, thanks to you helping me take care of Rorin over the years, this country has become so prosperous." Mukade smiled slightly, bowed humbly and said, "My lady queen, these are what I should do, you don't have to thank me. You see, the people love you so much, you can go up and say a few words." Sarah nodded with a smile, walked to the front and leaned against the railing to look at the people below, and waved to them with a warm smile. The people also raised their hands and cheered, and Sarah was very happy to see it. However, in this lively atmosphere, the 2 guards beside Sarah suddenly squeezed forward. Sarah only felt that her body suddenly rushed forward involuntarily, and then jumped over the railing. The child fell. She didn't understand what was going on. She could only turn all her emotions into a long scream, looking desperately at the changing scenery around her. In a trance, she seemed to see a smug arc in the corner of Mukade's mouth. Chapter 230 First Appearance. Sarah, whose body was falling rapidly, was full of despair and fear. She didn't understand why she fell, and she didn't know who the person who had just squeezed in from behind was. She only knew that she was about to end. However, in a trance, she only felt her body suddenly lighten, and the next moment her whole body was surrounded by a warm and open embrace. She raised her head in amazement, and what appeared in her sight was that familiar and unfamiliar face. Uzumaki, Naruto. She stared at Naruto blankly, feeling that she was hugged by him in the form of a princess, and their bodies leapt in midair. With a click, Naruto gently landed under another tower, holding the stunned Queen Sarah in his arms. "Are you all right?" Naruto asked softly, seeing her slightly dazed look. Sarah came back to her senses then, with a soft cry in her mouth, and hurriedly jumped out of his arms. Why did you stinky cockroach suddenly appear?" At this moment, Sarah, who was glad she was rescued, was very grateful, but she was still brooding about his sudden disappearance that day, and couldn't help but feel resentful. Resentment. Naruto just smiled slightly and said, "My lady queen, if I hadn't appeared, you would have fallen into a meat pie." "Bastard, you are the meatloaf." "Humph," Sarah asked angrily with a pretty face, "why did you suddenly disappear that day? Didn't I tell you to wait? I have something to do temporarily, so I will leave without saying goodbye. You won't be thinking about that matter, lady queen." Naruto laughed dryly. Hearing his words, Sarah suddenly recalled the scene at that time in her mind. It was so embarrassing. His own place actually sat on his face, and he was hugged by him later, and he looked and touched all over his body. What's more hateful is that this guy even put that stinky thing on his own. Yeah, shut up, you stinky cockroach. The more Sarah thought about it, the more embarrassed it became, and finally she couldn't stand it anymore. Yuji pushed him hard, and was about to run back. Naruto hurriedly grabbed her arm. Hey, what are you doing? Sarah was slightly startled. Her body was pulled by him, and she couldn't break free. She turned around and screamed angrily, but saw Naruto looking at her with a serious face. What's wrong? Sarah's expression was slightly shocked. Naruto pulled her over, looked at the street ahead, and said to her, Look, you just fell off the tread, and these people below are not messed up at all. Are these still your people and soldiers? They don't care about your life or death. Sarah followed Naruto's line of sight, and sure enough, everything over there was the same as before, and the accident that happened to him didn't seem to cause them to change at all. She couldn't help but be startled, and suddenly remembered that she seemed to have seen Mukade's gloomy smile when she fell from above. You mean, is this a conspiracy? Sarah finally realized something and asked. Naruto just smiled and said nothing. At this moment, a group of patrolling puppet soldiers suddenly looked towards the position of the two of them, and Sarah exclaimed slightly, which immediately attracted their attention. They're coming this way. Naruto pulled her and said, Let's dodge first. Why do you avoid them? They are my soldiers. I'm going to go and ask them what's going on. Although simple Sarah realized something, but because of her high position, she has always taken no precautions against her subordinates. I do not believe that these subordinates will be detrimental to me. So, at this moment, she did not listen to Naruto's advice, but was about to pull Naruto over to them, and said, This time you saved me, and the last time was not a good deal with you. You not from Roran. Let me show you around our country in a moment. Quote. Naruto shook his head secretly, let out a laugh, and added another comment to this simple queen in his heart. It is no wonder that such a scheming queen was kept secret by Mukade for so long and did not discover the abnormality of her country. She is really not fit to be the head of a country. Hey, what are you doing? Sarah suddenly felt herself falling into his arms again, and couldn't help struggling to ask anxiously. Naruto was helpless, let go of her body and let her go forward. However, before Sarah took a few steps, the patrolling puppet soldiers suddenly pulled out their long swords and slashed at her. Sarah didn't expect such a change at all, and she stayed in place for a while and couldn't move. At this moment, a flower flashed in front of her eyes, and a familiar back stopped in front of her. She raised her hand and waved lightly, and the puppet soldier flew out with a punch in an instant. Naruto. Sarah looked at him blankly. Naruto turned around and smiled faintly. Now do you believe it? These are the so-called loyal soldiers of yours. Sarah stared at the group of machines that flew out and broke apart in midair, and couldn't help stunned. Well, what the hell is going on here? Why are they killing me? It's impossible. At the next moment, Sarah, who couldn't recover from this transformation, couldn't help holding her head and yelled. At this moment, another group of puppet soldiers rushed towards the two soldiers. Naruto stepped forward and put his arms around her slender waist, and jumped away gently from the spot, avoiding the pursuit of the puppet soldiers, looking at Sarah, who was still immersed in unbelievable emotions in his arms, and said, Actually, all this is true. It's just your conspiracy for Minister Mukade, you've been used by him all the time. While avoiding the pursuit of the puppet soldiers, Naruto explained to her. After a while, the two finally escaped the pursuit and landed in a deserted alley. Along the way, Sarah listened to Naruto's narration, but her face was full of disbelief. How is it? Did you believe it? Naruto said. No, Mukade, he has done so much for Roran, how could he do such a thing? Naruto, you don't know him at all. He has been helping my mother with all his heart over the years since my mother passed away. You won't understand this. Sarah suddenly shouted, refuting him vigorously. Naruto sighed slightly. What a silly girl. Uzumaki Naruto. In short, I won't just listen to your words. I will investigate all of this myself. Sarah said suddenly. Naruto shook his head, seeing how stubborn she was. He had no choice but to say, well, since you still don't believe me, I'll let you see Mukade. Okay, I will definitely give Mukade his innocence. Sarah said, but for some reason, she was a little shaken. In fact, what Naruto said was not without reason, but she was still resisting this fact instinctively. Chapter 231 True Colors. Follow me. After passing through the buildings, Naruto and Sarah came to a secret underground elevator entrance. Sarah approached. Naruto stretched out his arms, hugged her slender waist and jumped down. Naruto, why did you bring me here? Sarah asked. Naruto smiled lightly. This is where Mukade produces puppet soldiers. Most of the people in Roran are secretly captured by him to do labor in your name. Look. After saying that, Naruto pointed to the lower left, and Sarah glanced in the direction he pointed. Her pupils shrank slightly. I saw rows of hungry, bony adult men over there, who were working hard at this time. She covered her mouth and whispered, how could this be? Naruto continued to point in the air. Look, those are the puppet soldiers that were produced. Now almost all of Roran's army has been replaced by these things, and these puppet soldiers are all controlled by Mukade. Sarah looked at the scene in front of her in disbelief. Naruto took her to the ground, and the two quietly entered the center of the secret room along the shadows on the edge of the aisle. Here, there are countless chakra threads connecting those puppet soldiers, providing them with energy for their activities, and these energy comes from the power of dragon veins. Seeing this, Sarah's face was full of solemn expression, and she believed most of Naruto's words, but she couldn't make a conclusion before she saw Mukade. However, she certainly couldn't stand the scene of using the dragon vein to create a puppet army and enslaving the people, and immediately decided to stop the dragon vein's energy supply to the power room. Naruto, take me there, I'm going to turn off the power source, Sarah said. Seeing that Naruto finally believed her, a satisfied smile appeared on his face, and he took her figure to dodge, avoiding the patrolling puppet soldiers, came to the center of the dragon vein under the power room, and released Sarah. Sarah nodded to him, sat down cross-legged and drew a few mysterious seals with both hands. After a while, the transmission channel connecting the dragon veins to the power room was finally closed, and the machines that produced the puppet soldiers finally stopped moving. Sarah stood up, clapped her hands and exhaled, I can't produce puppet soldiers anymore. I have to go and explain to everyone quickly so that they can return to freedom and go home. However, because the machine stopped moving, Mukade immediately sensed that there was a problem. At this time, the alarm sounded loudly, and all the active puppet soldiers suddenly became restless, and Sarah was soon discovered by the puppet soldiers. Naruto stepped forward and separated a shadow clone and said to Sarah, you were responsible for disbanding those people, my clone will protect your safety, and the puppet soldiers will be resisted by me. Well, Naruto, you have to be careful. Sarah nodded and followed the clone to the people. Naruto stayed and watched the puppet soldiers who kept rushing around. A gleam of light flashed in his eyes, and the corner of his mouth sneered slightly. Futon, wind style, wind blade dance. I saw his hands quickly hand seal, and then suddenly countless wind blades appeared in the surrounding air, rushing towards the puppet soldiers like a tide. Sarah couldn't help but look back, and she couldn't help but look shocked, only to see that the puppet soldiers were all cut into pieces by the whistling wind blades. The scene suddenly became a mess. However, after Futon, wind style, these puppet soldiers suddenly reunited under the power of the dragon veins and continued to pounce on Naruto, and they had already surrounded him. Naruto glanced at Sarah and saw that she was already instructing the people to retreat. For a while, he had no worries. He stretched his arm, and a chakra ball was formed. Let you guys do this often. Sweetened, water style, vortex giant blade. Naruto stretched out his hand and threw it, and the chakra ball in his hand flew out. In an instant, countless turbulent water waves erupted from the chakra ball, forming strong and dense waves in a blink of an eye, spinning and cutting, and all of the surrounding puppet soldiers were surrounded at once. The entire underground power room suddenly became an ocean. At this time, Sarah finally sent all the people out of the underground secret room, and came to Naruto with the help of the clone. Naruto smiled slightly. Let me destroy these puppet-producing machines. Sarah nodded. Naruto folded his hands together to form a seal. Multiple shadow clone technique. Bang bang bang. Hundreds of shadow clones suddenly appeared, and each shadow clone held a Rasengan in his hand. Go on. Do your best to destroy it. Naruto waved his hand and issued an order, and all the clones rushed up immediately, smashing the Rasengan in his hands on these machines. Boom boom boom. The sound of explosions sounded everywhere, and the entire underground chamber seemed to collapse. Sarah couldn't help but grab Naruto's clothes. At this moment, an angry roar suddenly came from above the two of them, the sixth generation of Hokage. How dare you destroy my power room? Sarah looked up and saw Mukade jump down from the top with a grim expression on his face, standing on the high platform above the two of them, shouting loudly, "Damn my plan. I want you to die here today. Uncle Mukade, I won't let you make these puppet soldiers again. I also turned off the energy supply in the power room. I allowed Naruto to destroy these machines. You can't make puppets in the future." Sarah he stood up and said, "I will never allow you to hurt Naruto." Mukade was stunned for a moment, and suddenly burst out laughing when he heard Sarah's words, and glared at her fiercely. "Sarah, you are so naive. Don't you understand now? Everyone who wants to stop me will die." You. Sarah was taken aback by his appearance, and finally realized that Mukade's previous everything was faked and that she was being used, and she was stunned for a while. Mukade continued to laugh wildly. "Sarah, you're just my puppet. It's ridiculous that you haven't noticed that you've been used by me for so many years. Compared to your mother, you're really tender. Ha ha ha, if your mother hadn't discovered my intentions back then, I'm afraid I would have completed the puppet army by now." Are you the one who took my mother? That's right. Your mother is damned. Mukade finally showed his hideous face and told Sarah everything he had done, which made Sarah unable to accept it for a while, and slumped in a slump, looking sad and confused. Chapter 232 Close Dragon Veins. At this moment, Naruto suddenly said coldly, "Beizu, you are really annoying." After speaking, he didn't see any movement, and the next moment his body suddenly jumped up and rushed directly in front of him. Boom. Mukade's sluggish body could not withstand Naruto's lightning-fast attack. The next moment, he was directly punched in the face, and his body flew out. The surrounding puppet soldiers moved one after another, and they rushed towards Naruto in groups. Naruto dodged back to Sarah's side, lifted her up and put her on his back. His figure flashed repeatedly, avoiding one after another puppet soldier, and rushed out of the secret room to the ground. Mukade was dazed by Naruto's heavy punch, but under the power of the dragon veins, he recovered immediately, commanding a large group of puppet soldiers to rush up to chase Naruto. Naruto ran. He comforted Sarah. "Sarah, you have to cheer up. Don't get hit by Mukade's words. The power of the dragon veins still needs you to shut down." Sarah, who was lying on his back, was slightly shocked, but she still said with a sad and lonely expression, "I'm just a puppet being used, I can't do anything, and my people are enslaved by Mukade." Naruto sighed. "Don't think like that. As long as you stop him now and close the dragon veins, you will still be the best queen of the Rorin people." Pause. Naruto continued. "Also, Mukade is trying to conquer the world with the puppet army, and I have the obligation to destroy him. You don't have to be afraid of him with me, I will protect you." Naruto. Sarah was moved by hearing this, and finally cheered up gradually, looking forward firmly. "Okay. Let's stop him together." Hearing this, a bright smile appeared on Naruto's face, and for a while, Sarah couldn't help but be stunned. Suddenly, a strong explosion was set off around Naruto. Naruto moved, and immediately left the place, and in a blink of an eye, he realized that there were all the puppet soldiers around. It seems that I am surrounded. But the number of puppet soldiers is indeed a bit large. Naruto murmured as he looked at the puppet army that surrounded him in all directions. At this time, Mukade had also jumped out, standing above a tall tower looking down at Naruto with a smug expression. The 6th generation of Hokage, so what if you were more powerful? Can you beat my puppet army? Ha ha ha. Naruto bowed his head and smiled, I'll give it a try. Soon as he finished speaking, he immediately reminded Sarah, hold me well, don't fall off. Sarah nodded, and hurriedly wrapped her arms around his neck tightly, her legs also clamped his waist. Naruto quickly hand-sealed with both hands, chakra surging out of his whole body, and he suddenly shouted, Mokuden, wood-style, world of trees wall. Boom! I saw his palms slam together, and the thick chakra shook the surrounding space slightly. Immediately afterwards, the ground began to vibrate, and huge trees burst out of the ground one by one, like bamboo shoots springing up after the rain, growing rapidly. Boom boom boom. The huge and sturdy trees have enveloped the surrounding 100 meters in an instant, and all the puppet soldiers within are bound by the sudden swept over the stems and branches, unable to move. Moreover, not only that, during the continuous output of Naruto chakra, the forest was still growing wildly, and it spread hundreds of meters in an instant, almost enclosing most of the surrounding puppet troops. This is Mokuden, wood style. Mukade above the tower was shocked, seeing that his puppet troops were actually restrained most of the time at this moment. He panicked for a while. Naruto chuckled, Mukade, even if you have the power of the dragon veins, it won't help, even if the weak people create more puppets. They are just empty shells after all. Bastard! You self-righteous guy! Mukade became angry, and the next moment he suddenly exuded a huge power, and the surrounding puppets that were originally restrained by Mokuden, wood style, turned into piles of tiny pieces. Parts, densely packed towards him. In a moment, his whole body was wrapped in puppet parts, and a huge centipede-like puppet monster suddenly formed. Ha ha ha! Look, this is my ultimate puppet. Wait to die, the 6th generation Hokage. With a bang, the huge puppet stepped in front of Naruto, and a large piece of Mokuden, wood style, was stepped on. Debris, the powerful momentum spread out, forming waves of violent air waves. The power of this huge puppet in Naruto's heart is supplied by the endless supply of dragon veins. Even if he fights it desperately now, it will be of no avail. Moreover, the fighting here has now entered a white hot, and the civilians in Roran City are also very dangerous. If it continues, it will only cause more damage and casualties. Naruto pondered for a while, exhaled slightly, and hand-sealed with both hands again, divided dozens of chakras, and spread them out to evacuate the crowd. At the same time, he divided 4 Mokuden, wood-style clones, jumped around the giant puppet, and hand-seal placed an enchantment. 4 purple flame barriers. The purple enchantment on all sides rose into the sky and immediately surrounded Mukade's puppet. Mukade screamed uncomfortably, and frantically charged and attacked the barrier with that giant body. But this barrier cannot stop the transmission of the power of the dragon veins. Under his endless furious attack, it will be broken out sooner or later, because the power of the dragon veins is too strong. Even Kyuubi, 9 tails, chakras are compared to 5 rivers. But fortunately, Naruto has now used the 4 purple flame barrier to control it, and although the surrounding puppet legions are still rushing over, they can continue to hold on for a while under the obstruction of Naruto's clone. Sarah, let's seal the dragon veins. After solving all this, Naruto immediately took Sarah into the underground chamber. There, the water flow just now has slowly receded, leaving only the puppet and the machine-disabled Mukuro in one place. The two found the dragon vein, and Sarah hurriedly jumped down and ran over, and began to completely close the dragon vein. At this moment, due to the double attack of the numerous puppet soldiers outside and the Mukade puppet, Naruto's 4 Mokuden, wood-style clones were all returned to their original forms, and the shadow clone also dissipated. Mukade puppet, who had regained freedom, roared angrily and rushed into the dragon vein where Naruto and Sarah were. At this time, Sarah was concentrating on closing the dragon veins. Under the riot of the Mukade puppet, a boulder suddenly fell from the top of her head and slammed into her body. Seeing this, Naruto directly blasted a big ball Rasengan, smashed the boulder into pieces, and then used a spiral wall to block her head to protect her safety. But Mukade's puppet had already discovered where the two were, and it rushed towards them. Chapter 233 Retain. Naruto smiled lightly, his hands quickly forming a seal. The next moment, I saw that the space in front of the Mukade puppet suddenly stretched out countless complex runes. As soon as the giant puppet touched these runes, it was as if it was blocked by an invisible barrier. Half a step forward. This is time-space ninjutsu. Damn it. You can still use such a profound technique. Mukade yelled, his voice full of disbelief. As a Hokage, what if you can't even deal with a Jonin like you? As soon as he finished speaking, the Mukade puppet angrily bombarded the space barrier in front of him with the power of his dragon veins. The energy attack simply cannot penetrate the wall of this space. As soon as it touches those mysterious runes, it has been transferred to another place. At this moment, Sarah finally closed the dragon vein completely. She stood up and looked at Naruto. Naruto, the dragon vein has been closed, what should I do now? Naruto had a relaxed look on his face when he heard this. Then you can just watch from the side. After he finished speaking, he withdrew the space barrier, looked at Mukade's huge puppet monster and said lightly, "You no longer have the power of dragon veins, are you ready to die?" "No, damn Sarah, damn 6th Hokage, I will never let you go." Mukade already felt that he could no longer get the power from the dragon veins, and there was a burst of fear in his heart. Facing this, he would use Mokuden wood-style space ninjutsu, and Naruto of various powerful ninjutsu. He no longer has any confidence. Stop talking nonsense. Naruto snorted, his hands clasped together. The ground suddenly rumbled and rumbling. One by one incomparably huge trees stretched out from under the puppet's feet, and instantly wrapped around Mukade's entire body. Puppet. Boom. The tree stem was wrapped around the puppet, and when it was pulled, it fell to the ground in an instant, causing a burst of dust. When the Mukade puppet reacted, Naruto had already jumped high above its head. Super Big Ball Rasengan. Rasengan with a diameter of tens of meters suddenly formed. The huge energy pressure caused a gust of wind, and Sarah couldn't help but exclaimed and was swept back by the gust of wind. Stepping forward, when he looked at Naruto again, his eyes were full of admiration and shock. Naruto at this time is simply like a god coming into the world, which is amazing. Boom boom boom. The giant puppet, which was firmly restrained and could not move at all, was finally hit by Rasengan's powerful spiral energy, and a violent air wave and explosion suddenly erupted. Huge blue light illuminated the entire surrounding space, and countless fragments of puppets flew in all directions. It took a long time for the scene to calm down. Sarah couldn't help wiping her eyes and looked at where Naruto was, but saw that Mukade was lying there in a twisted state, already dead. Naruto turned back and smiled. "Sarah, it's over." Sarah's face was also full of smiles as she slowly walked over. "Yeah, it's over, Naruto." She looked at the chaotic scene around her, and sighed on her face. "I didn't expect that Rorin, which has always been peaceful and prosperous, would have such a chaotic time. Naruto, I will work hard to build this country, so that it will be better than before. More prosperous." Quote. As she said that, a longing smile appeared on her face, and there was also a hint of expectation in Naruto's eyes. Naruto nodded, looking at the beautiful and strong Queen Rorin in front of him, with a hint of approval in his eyes. Knowing that her mother was killed by the person she trusted the most, and it has been used until now, Sarah's emotions have not collapsed. For the sake of this country, she knows that she must cheer up and entrust this mother to her country to build and protect it. Stand up. The city was filled with the afterglow of the sunset, and the dark curtain gradually came. Naruto stood beside the dragon veins, looked at his hands with a puzzled look on his face, and murmured, Strange, why hasn't the time and space recovered yet? Naruto, what did you say? Looking at him muttering alone, Sarah leaned over and asked curiously. Nothing. Sarah looked at him strangely, and suddenly said, by the way, Naruto, I don't know where you are. You should not be from Roran. Mukade calls you the 6th generation Hokage. I feel very familiar. It looks like, although Roran is in the country of the wind, the country seems to have very little contact with the outside world, so that some things in the ninja world are not very clear. As a queen, Sarah has been used as a puppet all these years, and know very little about the outside world. Naruto was stunned for a while, and then smiled. I am a ninja from Konoha village. I came here to deal with Mukade. After the task is completed, I have to go back. What? Are you leaving? Sarah was shocked when she heard the words. With a strong reluctance on her face, she stepped forward and grabbed Naruto's arm, and said in a panic. Seeing her reluctant appearance, Naruto jumped slightly in his heart, but nodded slowly. Sarah's expression became sad when she heard this, and her mind suddenly remembered the scenes when she first met him, thinking that she hadn't punished him yet, so he was about to leave, but his body had been seen and touched all over by him. How does this count? Thinking for a long time, Sarah finally raised her head. Naruto, can you stay for a while? You have helped me with such a big thing this time. No matter what, I will thank you well. Besides, that day you. She said. She lowered her head with a twisted expression, and Yuhi's face was very moist. Seeing her little daughter's mood, Naruto still didn't know her intentions, and his heart skipped a beat at the same time with a burst of regret. I always want to return to the original time and space, and the fate with Sarah will be forever cut off with the time and space. Instead, I might as well leave earlier. However, seeing her eagerly looking forward look, Naruto couldn't bear to refuse, so he nodded and agreed to her request. I secretly thought, anyway, the time and space have not recovered yet. Even if I leave, I don't know where to go, so let's stay in Roran for the time being. Seeing Naruto nodding, Sarah's little face was immediately filled with a happy smile. Naruto shook his head and laughed. I pondered secretly in my heart. According to the original plot, after defeating Mukade, the time and space will return to normal, and I will return to the original world, but the question is, how does the time and space recover? Or was it restored for some reason? He didn't know this at all, which meant that he couldn't grasp the rules at all. Moreover, this time, I did not encounter 4 generations of them to carry out the task after I traveled, which means that the plot has changed. In this way, the original plot cannot be used for reference at all, and it is even more difficult to go back. Confirmed. Chapter 234 Sarah's Song. After 2 days of rectification, Roran regained its former prosperity. After the collapse of the puppet army, the people who had been enslaved were liberated, and the people who had regained their freedom took to the streets, adding a lot of vitality to the city. Naruto stands on the top of the tower, overlooking the entire Roran, the blue sky Shirakumo and the warm sunshine. This dreamy country is like a paradise on earth. But there was no joy in his heart, only melancholy. 2 days later, the time and space are still so calm, and he still can't go back to the original era. In these 2 days, he couldn't help thinking of Bai and Zuiyu, as well as everything in Konoha village. I don't know what happened to the ninja world in the past few days when I suddenly disappeared. Thinking about it, Naruto's face showed a look of emotion. At this moment, a soft singing voice suddenly entered his ears. Roaring above the rising light. Mixed feelings. The vein of the dragon that must be protected. The white blade shines, looking up at the sky. Dust wind mess together. O glorious son of glory. The flowers are scattered. The light on Rasengan. The dragon hand breaks the garden. In the face of the sun. Eternal song connect the heart. The melodious song came slowly, surrounding Naruto's ears, and his eyes couldn't help but look below the song. There, Sarah's soft lips parted lightly, and she sang quietly. Naruto froze for a while. The next moment, he flashed and appeared beside Sarah. Today, Sarah is wearing only a cool light-colored dress, and with her long Yuhi's smooth long hair, she looks more pure and soft. Naruto's appearance made her stop singing. She turned her head and said quietly, "Naruto, you seem to be in trouble. Is it because I forced you to stay here?" Naruto was stunned for a moment, and said, "You think too much. Who said I was troubled?" Sarah stared into his eyes and said, "I see the sadness in your eyes." Naruto shook his head, smiled, and stopped talking. "Hey, Naruto, if you want to go back, I won't stop you anymore." Sarah suddenly said, "This is not your country after all, and there is nothing that you are nostalgic about." Speaking of which, she said there was a deep sadness in his eyes. Seeing her like this, Naruto couldn't help shaking his head and sighing. "Really, don't try to guess people's minds casually. This country is very peaceful and beautiful. How could I not like to stay here? Really, but..." At this moment, there was a sudden bang not far away, and in an instant, thick smoke billowed out, and the sky was filled with flames. Halfway through her words, Sarah couldn't help but exclaimed, looking at the bursts of fire from far to near not far away. "What happened?" She turned to Naruto. Naruto frowned slightly, and his perception had already detected a large wave of malice running around in the city. It seems that many people entered the Rorin. "Sarah, you stay here and I'll come and see." "Naruto," Sarah called out, but the next moment Naruto's figure had already leapt out. Boom boom boom. Naruto sneaked quietly between the towers, and soon came to the place where the incident happened. "I saw the buildings here were bombed to pieces, the streets were also bombed with potholes, and a thick bloody smell filled the air." "Lay out. Kill." A group of voices sounded, and Naruto saw a group of ninjas at the corner of the street fighting desperately. The forehead guards on both sides were actually Sand Ninja Village and Konoha Village. Naruto was startled subconsciously, but he immediately reacted and approached quietly. "You can't escape, Konoha bastards," a Sand Ninja leader shouted fiercely, looking at the group of Konoha ninjas who were surrounded by them. "We fought with them." Konoha's ninjas rose up to resist. Everyone raised their weapons, rushed up, and fought with the Sand Ninjas. All kinds of Kaden, fire style, futon, wind style, Doden, earth style, are scattered everywhere. The battle between the two sides is extremely fierce. In an instant, the surrounding buildings have been destroyed, and even many people have been implicated. Pressed under the building, wailing and moaning, with desperate eyes in his eyes. Naruto hid in the shadow of a huge building, watching the chaotic battle between Sand Ninja and Konoha in the field, and his heart couldn't help falling into contemplation. At this time, it should be during the Third World War, and during the Third World War, Konoha faced attacks from almost all other villages successively. And this Sand Ninja village was the first village to fight with Konoha. Moreover, the demise of Rorin was also caused by the subsequent war, so it seems that the current Rorin has been caught in the war, but this country seems to be a victim of the war. Compared with the big country and the big village, although Rorin is prosperous, it lacks an armed force that can protect it. It is difficult to maintain the original peace and tranquility in the wars of other countries. This is also the sadness of the small countries mixed with the big countries. While thinking about it, screams came from the front. It turned out that Konoha's ninjas had been wiped out by Sand Ninja. At this time, only one Konoha ninja escaped the enemy's siege and ran in the direction of Naruto. Naruto froze, seeing the fiasco of Konoha ninjas. As the sixth generation of Hokage, he instinctively wanted to rush to kill the ninjas in the Sand Ninja village, but he knew that the Sand Ninja village was Konoha's best ally in later generations, and if he shoots easily, will it break the balance of the battle and have an impact on future generations? For a time, Naruto couldn't help but hesitate. But at this moment, the escaped Konoha ninja had already rushed to Naruto's side, and as soon as the man turned around, he flashed into the place where Naruto was hiding. Naruto looked closely, and a pretty face full of desire to survive entered his line of sight. He wanted to use Hiraishin's technique to leave this place, but he stayed where he was in the next moment. Call. In an instant, the figure slammed into Naruto's arms, and a shocked whisper came out of his mouth. You. Terrified, she instinctively waved the kunai in her hand and stabbed Naruto's chest. Snapped. With a light sound, Naruto grabbed the opponent's wrist with one hand, and Kuu fell to the ground with a clang. Hem. A muffled hum came, and the other party realized that he had been directly restrained, and immediately kicked Naruto's head without caring about anything. However, in the next moment, she only felt that the figure in front of her flashed, and she lost her target immediately, and then her mouth was tightly covered by a strong hand. She was terrified and hurriedly struggled, but suddenly the waist is tight again, and the whole person has fallen under the control of the other party. Chapter 235 Persuade. She opened her eyes wide and her pupils shrank for a while, sinking into a burst of despair in her heart. Just when she thought she was about to end in death, a gentle male voice suddenly sounded in her ears. Don't be afraid, I'm not an enemy. After Naruto finished speaking, he took her directly with a Hiraishin technique and disappeared in place, and the next moment he came to the room where he lived for the past few days. Here he set the space coordinates. Letting go of the man in his arms, Naruto took 2 steps back and looked at it for a while, but suddenly saw the look on the other's face, and blurted out, Namikaze Minato. It's you. Naruto knew that the other party had misunderstood, and hurriedly explained, I'm not Namikaze Minato, you've got the wrong person. How can you recognize the wrong person? I'm Uchiha Makoto, don't you know me? She exclaimed anxiously. What? This time it was Naruto's turn to be surprised. He didn't expect that this was his dead mother-in-law, Suzuki's mother Uchiha Makoto. Hey, what's your attitude? You really don't know me anymore. Makoto resented. Naruto finally came back to his senses and smiled bitterly. I'm really not Minato, you'll know if you look more closely. Makoto approached suspiciously, staring at Naruto with a pair of big eyes. Because of her approach, Naruto also saw her more clearly. The small Chong nose and beautiful big eyes were somewhat similar to those of Zuo-Yu, and, under the tight battle suit, the mature body tightly wrapped, but also exudes a comforting fresh aroma. Makoto stared at him for a long time, and finally she whispered, Really? You are really not Minato. You just look like Minato. And you look younger than me. Who are you? What's your name? Naruto saw that she finally believed. He couldn't help laughing. My name is Naruto. Naruto, you're also a Konoha ninja. Why didn't I even know you were there? Strange. Makoto looked at the Konoha forehead guard on his arm with a strange look on his face. Naruto didn't want to dwell on this matter, so he changed the subject and said, Makoto, what happened just now? Why did you guys fight with Sandin's people in Rorin? The name of this mother-in-law made Naruto feel a little awkward. Hearing him asking about this, Makoto was also successfully distracted, and looking at Naruto, he said helplessly, the Sand Ninja Village and Konoha had been fighting more than half a month ago, but Konoha was in short supply. There is no way to drag out a protracted battle, so this time we sent our team to carry out a surprise attack on Sand Ninja, but when we passed Rorin, we were discovered by the people of Sand Ninja Village and surrounded by the people they had ambushed in advance. Quote. It seems that Konoha Village has Sand Ninja's spies. Naruto frowned slightly. Yeah, the team I brought out this time has been wiped out. Makoto shook his head and sighed with a sad expression on his face. Suddenly, she raised her head and looked at Naruto with anticipation. Since you are a ninja of Konoha, you should be here to carry out the mission. Hurry up and send the situation back to the village. Hearing this, Naruto was stunned for a moment, and then his face became embarrassed. He didn't want to participate in these battles, because no matter where he started, he would definitely have an impact on the entire battle situation, and a chain reaction would occur at that time. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, he would rather wait quietly in Rorin for a few days, and return to his original world when time and space recover. Hey, don't you want to? Are you still a Konoha ninja? Makoto didn't expect him to have such a reaction. After a moment of surprise, he frowned and looked at him suspiciously. Could it be that you are a spy? After she finished speaking, she pulled out Kuu and became alert. Naruto was dumbfounded and said, "If I were a spy, would I still save you?" Makoto also felt that it was reasonable, so he put down his kunai and asked, "What kind of art did you use just now?" "The art that was sent back to me in an instant. If I guess right, it should be time and space ninjutsu." "Minato, who are you?" She felt that the two were so similar, and that space-time ninjutsu was so similar, there must be a connection. "My relative." Naruto didn't know how to answer, so he had to say this. "A relative? I didn't hear him mention it." Makoto was a little disbelieving. Naruto spread his hands. "Then there is nothing I can do." After thinking for a while, Makoto finally asked again, "Your strength seems to be very strong. Is it a secret weapon cultivated by the top?" Faced with her guesses one after another, Naruto's head grew big, and he quickly shook his head and said, "Sister, can you stop asking? The most important question now is not my identity, right? You are the only one left now. I advise you to hurry back to Konoha." Makoto's expression darkened when he heard this, and he sighed in frustration. "Yeah, my companions have all sacrificed, how can I go back alone now? Why do you want to save me? It's better to let me die on the battlefield." Quote. "Do you believe in fate?" Naruto couldn't help asking when she saw the frustration on her face. Makoto froze for a moment and replied, "I believe it." Naruto laughed. "That's right, since you believe in fate, just treat it as fate arranged for me to save you this time, so don't sigh anymore. Being able to survive in this age of war is a kind of lucky, why should you care about fame and fortune?" Makoto had never heard such remarks, and looked at Naruto for a while and couldn't help but stunned. Why do you know so much? It looks like a mature old man." Naruto smiled lightly. "This is just the way to survive. Well, you can go back." He waved his hand, which was too much trouble. Her safety. As for why she didn't give her Hiraishin kunai, on the one hand, she didn't want the people of Konoha village to know of her existence, and on the other hand, it was also to let the village learn something from this kunai. Anyway, he doesn't want to change history. Makoto's heart was full of doubts, and she was full of curiosity about this mysterious man who looked so similar to Minato. In the end, she could only sigh and leave. Looking at the direction she was leaving, Naruto was worried for a while. He had already intersected with Konoha's historical figures. This damn time and space hoped to recover before he was completely involved. Chapter 236: The Spread of War. A few days have passed. In the past few days, in order to calm down, Naruto can only practice ninjutsu and chakra silently, and go out for a walk and chat with Sarah in his spare time. Sarah is now more and more reliant on Naruto. Since Mukade's fall, she has asked Naruto many questions from the country, and Naruto is a transmigrator with a modern management philosophy in his previous life, and he is still in the 6th form. On behalf of Hokage, he was able to answer some of Roran's state questions, and was also very satisfied with Sarah. Sarah even wondered, if he could keep Naruto in Roran for a long time, would he be able to make him his guardian knight? It's a pity that as soon as the idea came up, Sarah shook her head for a while. No, Naruto is Konoha's ninja. He always has to go back to the village, only there is his home, just like Roran is his own home. How can I selfishly force Naruto to satisfy my own wishes? And although Naruto is calm on the surface now, he is faintly uneasy deep inside. The time and space in the original work recovered almost quickly, but it has been several days now. If he wanted to recover, he should have been able to recover back to normal. Moreover, Naruto also knows that it has been 6 years here after Beizu crossed over, and he still hasn't returned to the past. Finally died in this time and space. Could it be that he, like Beizu, will spend all the next time in this time and space? Thinking of this possibility, Naruto's heart suddenly sank. If this is the case, what will the people of that world do? Bye, Sakura, Hinata. Naruto. At this time, Sarah's voice rang in her ears. Naruto was slightly startled and hurried back to his senses. only to see Sarah looking at him anxiously. "What's wrong?" he asked, with a forced smile on his face. Sarah looked at him quietly and said faintly, "Naruto, what were you thinking just now? Why are you looking so sad? Did you remember something unhappy?" Naruto listened and shook his head. Seeing this, Sarah suddenly jumped up and grabbed his hands, staring at him with a pair of beautiful brown eyes. "Naruto, you must have something to do, why don't you tell me? You have been with me these days. Helped me so much, and seeing you unhappy now makes me sad, you know. If it's because you're unhappy here, I won't stop you." Quote. Naruto was stunned by her. Looking at her earnest and caring eyes, he couldn't help feeling a little warm. Although he couldn't return to that time and space for a while, at least this girl always cared about him. "I'm fine, Sarah." Naruto turned around, looked at the blue sky outside the window, and said slowly, "I'll tell you the truth, I'm a ninja from Konoha, but I can't go back now." "Go Konoha." Quote. "Why?" Sarah asked hurriedly, seeing that he was finally willing to speak. Naruto sighed slightly, "Because, I am not a person from this time and space, to be precise, I am a person from more than 20 years later, because the power of the dragon veins came to this time and space by accident, which is relative to me. The world of 20 years ago." Quote. After he finished speaking, he looked back at Sarah, but saw Sarah staring at him with a stunned mouth, her face full of confusion and disbelief. Sarah couldn't digest this fact for a while, stared at Naruto with wide eyes for a long time, and finally sighed, "Naruto, when are you going back?" When she spoke, her heart couldn't help but twitch and lose. Another time and space, so once he goes back, he will never see him again. Naruto shook his head. "I don't know, Mukade crossed over in the same way as me, and he stayed here for 6 years. Maybe I will stay forever, not necessarily." When Sarah heard this, she was stunned for a moment, but she couldn't help but feel a little joy in her heart, but then she felt guilty for her selfishness. Naruto must have hoped that he would return to the original time and space, but he would be devastated because he couldn't go back. Feeling joy, such a thought is really selfish. Next, the two fell into silence for a while, and Sarah hesitated several times, trying to comfort him, but looking at his expression, she must have been extremely nostalgic for the people or things in the original time and space. Time passed bit by bit, and Roran City ushered in the end of the day without any waves. Xingye's brilliance enveloped Roran. Naruto and Sarah were each unable to sleep peacefully. Naruto was troubled by the growing premonition that he couldn't go back, and Sarah was troubled purely by Naruto's troubles. Just then, a roar from the Roran frontier shattered the calm night. It was the sound of the explosion of the detonator. Boom boom boom. Immediately afterwards, there were countless explosions, and the entire Roran could not help trembling slightly. "What's wrong? What happened?" Sarah hurriedly jumped off the bed, and the guards outside the door hurried over to respond. "My lady queen, there is a large army of ninjas fighting at the Roran border." Sarah frowned when she heard the words. At this time, Naruto's figure and the mountain appeared in front of her, and said, "Sarah, we can't stay here for a long time. Let's leave here first, and the battlefield over there will be transferred here." Naruto, damn it, why did they have to come to our Roran to fight? Sarah bit Kiba, her eyes full of anxiety. The last time those ninja skirmishes affected dozens of my Roran people, the scale of this battle is so large, what will we the people of Roran do? Quote. Naruto saw that she was worried about the safety of the people, and while he secretly admired it, he also disliked the war. From his perception, he could tell that the fighting ninjas were Konoha and Sandin. Although he was the 6th generation of Hokage, he should take Konoha's position, but this time, he didn't do it, and if he wanted to, he'd rather take Roran's position. Just as he was talking, the sound of explosions and roars gradually approached. People in Roran City flew around, and the fire was soaring into the sky. In an instant, a large number of buildings were destroyed, which naturally affected many civilians inside. Naruto directly carried Sarah on his back, and since she was only wearing a pajamas, he pulled another robe and draped it over her. Sarah, stay on my back, now let's go to evacuate the crowd. Naruto said to her, and handed out a lot of shadow clone with both hands, which would not attract the attention of others, and changed all shadow clone into in the appearance of a guard. He went to various places in Roran to evacuate and rescue the people. And he himself flew to the top of the highest tower with Sarah on his back, watching the increasingly fierce battle in the city. The night wind, blowing gently, brought a bloody aura, and Naruto's face was sinking like water. Chapter 237 Evacuation. Roran shrouded in the fog of war under her feet. Sarah, who was lying on Naruto's back, was deeply powerless. She sighed faintly, and said helplessly, Naruto, why are there so many wars in this world? What? Wouldn't it be nice for everyone to live together peacefully? Naruto pondered for a while, then said slowly, war will never be eliminated. Where there are interests, there will be struggles. This has been the case since ancient times. Sarah fell silent. She didn't understand these things. She was just a girl who grew up in Roran City. She didn't know much about the world. Everything was quiet before. Naruto felt the depression on Sarah's back, turned around and comforted her softly. But Sarah, don't worry, even if the world is full of wars, as long as I'm still by your side, I will definitely protect your safety. Sarah's body shuddered, looking at Naruto's sunny-side face. The heavy shadow shrouded in her heart dissipated instantly. She only felt that Naruto was by her side, even if there were more ups and downs in the future fear. Next, after Naruto's clone successfully transferred all the Roran people out of the battlefield, he left Roran City with Sarah on his back. The next day, the morning sun was very bright. Naruto and Sarah were standing at the border of Roran. Behind them stood a group of Roran people. They looked at the broken Roran City with regretful and angry eyes. Sarah clenched her fists, with a choked voice and murmured, Mother, Sarah is useless, unable to protect Roran, Sarah is a sinner. Lord Sarah, don't say that. You've been worrying too much for us. A guard came over, comforting and persuading, and Lord Naruto protected us and escaped the battle successfully. It's something to celebrate that we survived. Yeah, Sarah, you see that your people are still alive, and now it's just the city of Roran that has been destroyed. As long as everyone is still there, why should you worry? Then you can gather everyone again. Power to build another Roran. Naruto patted her on the shoulder, comforting. Yes, build Roran again. Build Roran again. We will always follow you, Madam Queen. The people behind them shouted. Do you want to build another Roran? The encouragement and support of the crowd finally brought a bright smile on Sarah's face again. She nodded vigorously and glanced at everyone. Okay. Let's build another Roran. Lord Sarah, Lord Sarah. Everyone cheered and shouted around Naruto. After a long time, the voices of the people fell. Sarah said, however, we must protect ourselves now and not be involved in the war. So we must leave here and meet again after the war is over. Everyone also nodded. Naruto said to Sarah, next, we must do a good job of dispersing, so that everyone can leave this war zone safely. Sarah nodded and looked at him. Well, it's up to you to decide. There are a lot of people in Roran, but under Naruto's hundreds of shadow clone, it is very easy to take a team and leave everywhere. And taking advantage of the safety of the city during this time, everyone went back to prepare the evacuation supplies. After taking them, Naruto's shadow clone and the guards led the team and left as soon as possible. In the evening, the crowd finally dissipated, and Naruto, who had finished all the work, couldn't help but feel a little tired. After all, the workload of evacuating the people of a country was not small. And, after all the shadow clones are in contact, it will definitely be more fatigued. But fortunately, he opened his arms to sense the life force in the surrounding space, and those faint green lights that were invisible to the naked eye gathered towards him in an instant, flowing over and over his body over and over again, alleviating his fatigue. Opening his eyes, Naruto saw Sarah and a few courtiers, guards and maids in the center, and said with a smile, you all leave as well. Sarah will be protected by me, leave it to me, you should rest assured. Huh. Several people saw Naruto's ability, and they all used him as the backbone at this time. When he said this, they all nodded in agreement. Looking at the city of Rorin with nostalgia, he said goodbye to Sarah Naruto and left. The people were gone, and only Sarah and Naruto were left standing. At this moment, facing the situation that she was about to leave Rorin, Sarah was saddened, but more attached to Naruto. Without Naruto by her side, she really couldn't imagine how she would hold on go down. Raising her head and looking at Naruto's resolute face, a smile appeared on Sarah's face. Naruto, from now on, I will be someone without a home, you will never leave me, right? Naruto pressed her weak shoulders, nodded, and promised, as long as I haven't disappeared in this time and space, I will always protect you. Well, Naruto, if you really disappear, then I must disappear with you too. Sarah said softly, taking a step closer to his arms. Naruto smiled and wrapped his arms around her soft body. He couldn't help but secretly sighed in his heart that even if he had such a strong power, he was still being played with by this time and space. Now this feeling of not being able to grasp where the future will go makes him very unhappy. Sarah is so attached to herself. What will happen if she suddenly disappears one day and she is the only one left? Through these few days of contact, Naruto knows that Sarah is a kind and strong girl, but at the same time she is very innocent, a girl who is not familiar with the world. To be honest, if he suddenly returns to the original time and space, he will definitely treat her to her. Can't let go. Thinking of this, he suddenly thought of the power of the dragon veins. The distortion of time and space is caused by the power of the dragon veins. Can he use the power of the dragon veins to control the time and space? It's just that the risk of doing this is too high. If you accidentally can't control the power of the dragon veins, it will be bad if you cause a greater distortion of time and space. Then you will be teleported away again, and it will be a tragedy to become a wanderer in time and space. Who knows what era and background will be teleported to after the time-space distortion. Therefore, although he has been thinking about the way to go back these days, he has not put it into action. Besides, he couldn't leave Sarah now, so he could only settle her first. Chapter 238. See also Makoto. Sarah, Naruto left Rorin, which had become a battlefield, and he didn't want to get involved, so he could only escape. Using his perception to investigate the surrounding situation, he found that there were a large number of ninja troops stationed on both sides of Rorin. The two sides were Sand Ninja Village and Konoha Village. The aimless Naruto didn't know where to go, so he simply went back to Rorin City for a stroll. At this time, there were some civilians in Rorin who were particularly stubborn and unwilling to leave here, watching them swear to stay. Here's the look, Naruto the two sighed slightly. They knew that no amount of persuasion would let them leave, and they could only pray that they would survive the aftermath of the war. After walking around for a while, both of them were hungry, but no one opened a restaurant in the city for a long time, so they had to take her out of the city and cross the desert to the forest to find something to eat. With Naruto's strength, he can come and go in this world, but even so, he still has the feeling that the world is so big that he has nowhere to stay. Perhaps it is because he has left the time and space that he has adapted to, and is here to face and people who are completely strangers to themselves are like coming to a new continent, making people feel at a loss. In the forest, which is already the territory of the country of fire, Naruto caught a hare and a pheasant, and built a fire to grill in the dark. The meaty aroma from the food made Sarah, who was beside her, swallow her saliva. She was next to Naruto's arm, her stomach growling. Naruto smiled and handed her the roasted rabbit meat in his hand. The fragrant and greasy rabbit meat immediately made Sarah's appetite widened, and she ate it regardless of her image. Naruto had not eaten for nearly a day and a night, and Naruto had long been hungry. After eating the barbecue, Meme looked at the fire in front of her eyes and rested against the tree behind her. At this time, Sarah had already finished eating and fell asleep. Naruto glanced at Sarah, who was sleeping peacefully in his arms, and couldn't help showing a smile on his face. Closing his eyes, unconsciously, he gradually became confused. At voices suddenly came from behind the two of Naruto. The next moment Naruto woke up suddenly. In this era of war, he couldn't tolerate the slightest negligence. Long before the two of them sat down to eat barbecue, Naruto had already set up a perception barrier around them. At this time, those people touched the perception barrier, and Naruto woke up immediately. It was still very dark, and there was still some time before dawn. At this time, Sarah was sleeping soundly. Naruto didn't want to disturb her, so he set up a Mokuden wood-style clone to protect her, and quietly moved towards her. Sneak in the direction from which the voice came. Going around a few bends, passing through a few big trees, and breaking through the dense grass, Naruto finally saw those figures. The ninja of Konoha. A total of 5. Moreover, these ninjas are obviously not combat troops. Looking at their clothes, Naruto immediately saw that they were people from Danzogen's troops. At this time, the 5 figures were gathering together and discussing in a low voice. "Jiyu, how's the situation on your side?" one of them said. Codenamed Swift Rain replied, "It's business as usual, the other party hasn't found out yet." "Well, very good, we must be secretive for the next assassination mission. We can't let the other ninjas in Konoha know, otherwise it will make our Konoha army unstable." "Understood." Everyone else nodded in agreement. "Then disperse now. Do yourselves." After a few times, the 5 people in front of Naruto disappeared. Although Naruto didn't know what they were going to do, he knew that it must have nothing to do with him, so he no longer cared. Since they have left here, he will no longer continue to investigate. Returning to Sarah, after Naruto released Mokuden wood-style clone, he continued to rest. Sarah hadn't woken up until it was almost dawn, when Naruto raised the fire again, ready to make some breakfast. Just when he separated out a shadow clone to go hunting for game, Naruto suddenly shuddered, and the next moment, he disappeared in place without even thinking about it. The art of Hiraishin. In an instant, the scene changed. Naruto saw a boulder smashed in front of him. He quickly stretched out his palm, a Rasengan formed instantly, and with a bang, he pressed on the boulder that fell quickly. The boulder was instantly smashed into pieces by the powerful spiral energy, and rolled back with a strong momentum. "Who?" A few surprised voices sounded in front. "Naruto." And behind Naruto, a familiar and unfamiliar voice came over. It was Uchiha Makoto. Naruto looked back at her, only to see that she was in a state of embarrassment at this time. Her clothes were a little tattered, and there was a trace of blood on the corner of her mouth. The pair of Tomo's Sharingan stared straight at Naruto. "Naruto, why are you here?" Makoto was extremely surprised, but he was also very fortunate. If Naruto didn't appear suddenly, I was afraid that he would have been killed. Before that, she never imagined that Konoha would send someone out to kill her. And the reason was because he returned to Konoha alone. Konoha executives suspected that he had become a spy of the enemy country. Therefore, it is better to kill by mistake than to let go. As a Uchiha clan, she has her own pride. She can kill the enemy on the battlefield. Even if she dies, she has no regrets, but she can't accept this kind of death that is suspected by her own village. Such a person is probably even a hero. Monuments cannot be engraved with names. Looks like it's time for me to appear. Naruto judged something from her situation, and then took a closer look at the figures in front of her, and immediately understood everything. "Are those guys trying to kill you?" Naruto pointed to the 5 and asked. Makoto nodded. "They're experts from the village, they said they wanted to get rid of me as a spy." Naruto smiled slightly. These 5 people were the Anbu of the 5 roots that he discovered just now. At that time, he still wondered who they were assassinating. It turned out to be Uchiha Makoto. With Danzo's character and way of doing things, it's not at all surprising to do so. Even in times of peace, he's always unscrupulous, let alone in times of war. For Konoha's safety, he would rather kill a suspected spy by mistake than risk the information being stolen. In a way, it's in Konoha's best interest to deal with him this way. However, Naruto couldn't see it. Therefore, he must make a move. Namikaze Minato, this is our mission, don't interfere. At this moment, the leader of the other 5 shouted. Chapter 239 Spike. Namikaze Minato, looks like I've been misunderstood again. Naruto smiled faintly. Don't think that you can despise the majesty of our Lord Danzo. This mission is ordered by Lord Danzo himself. If you want to stop it, you will not get along with us, Lord Danzo. We will get rid of it even if we die. Drop you, Anbu shouted sternly. Makoto pulled Naruto's arm and said anxiously, you go quickly. Don't mix things up, although I don't know what the relationship between you and Namikaze Minato is, but I don't want you to be subjected to this because of me. People misunderstand, it's not good for you or Minato. Naruto didn't expect her to be so considerate of others. She shook her head, the smile on her face deepened. No way, I've been misunderstood, and it's too late to leave. After he finished speaking, the people on the opposite side had already rushed towards him. Doden, Earth Style, Earth Dragon Thorn. Kaden, Fire Style, Head Hard. At this time, it was in a forest, and the sharp earth thorns that suddenly appeared on the ground and the strong flames flying in the air gave Naruto nowhere to hide. But he didn't panic, and with a sharp wave of his arm, Hiraishin cut through the air and flew towards the opposite side. Immediately afterwards, Naruto turned around and directly picked up Makoto, who was stunned in place, and disappeared into the space the next moment. And when he appeared again, the figure had already appeared behind the 5 people with Makoto. The art of Hiraishin. The 5 were shocked. As expected of Hiraishin, he was able to evade our coordinated attack, and he was fast enough. Naruto smiled lightly, and at the next moment, he suddenly put down Makoto and rushed towards the 5. Raising Kuuji in his hand, he stabbed the person on the opposite side. Seeing Naruto rushing over, they pulled out the short knives behind them and greeted them. Boom. However, the first person to come up was directly kicked out by Naruto. Immediately after the second person's knife light descended from the top to the top of Naruto's head, Naruto didn't even look at it. A violently rotating wind-type chakra emerged from above Kunwu, and then slanted upwards with a tinkling sound. The sound of metal breaking sounded, a bloody light splashed out, and the man above Naruto's head flew out. At this time, seeing that the 2 companions had already retreated, the other 3 roared and rushed towards Naruto. Everyone's speed was maximized. Like a gust of wind, it swept in with bursts of knife light. Naruto could see that these 3 were ninjas of swordsmanship. But what about this? With Naruto's current strength, there is basically no one who can match him in terms of physical speed. Even if these people are strong in swordsmanship, under the speed of Naruto pervert's reaction and body speed, it is of no use at all. I saw Naruto gently toss kunai in midair, and then his hands slammed forward. Boom! With 2 muffled sounds, the 2 Anbu's bodies seemed to automatically bump into his hands. The eyes of the 2 were full of pain, and they stared at the big hand on their abdomen in disbelief. 5 Elements Seal. Naruto spit out a few words in his mouth, the 2 of them fell down with convulsions, and the whole body of chakra was sealed. At this time, the other person finally leapt from behind to the top of Naruto's head, and the knife light in his hand just touched the collar of Naruto's neck. Makoto, who was watching the battle, couldn't help but exclaimed, because this was an unavoidable attack. At such a close distance, and Naruto was still at the moment when he just paused, it was impossible to avoid it. However, the corner of Naruto's mouth twitched slightly, and the coup that he had thrown up just now just fell down on top of that person. Then, swoosh! The golden light flashed and disappeared suddenly. The place where the knife light passed by that person was just a void. The next moment, he couldn't help but react, and there was a wave of air above his head. You lost. Naruto held his back with one hand, and held Kuuji around his neck with the other. His body slammed to the ground, unable to move, his eyes were full of disbelief. It's too fast, it's too fast. At all, I can't defeat it. He muttered to himself, as if he couldn't accept the existence of such a strong person for a while. At this time, Makoto ran over, his face full of excitement, and Yuhi, looking at Naruto's eyes full of awe and admiration. His breathing became slightly short. "Naruto, you are so strong. The speed is so fast that my Sharingan can't catch it." Naruto smiled lightly, looked at her and said, "What are these people going to do?" Makoto was taken aback. At this moment, the man under Naruto's hands suddenly murmured for a while, and then his whole body suddenly burst into flames. Naruto hurriedly jumped away, only to see his entire body turn to ashes in an instant, without a trace of breath left. At the same time, there were also 4 flames around, and then went out instantly. All 4 of them also chose to commit suicide. This is Danzo's spell. If these men fall into the hands of the enemy, they will choose suicide to keep the secret. Seeing Makoto as if it was the first time he saw such a scene, Naruto explained. "Hey, Danzo's management system is really good." Makoto sighed secretly. "What should we do next?" Naruto looked at her with a slight frown, and whispered, "It seems that your position in Konoha has become very dangerous. Danzo may send someone to assassinate you at any time, this time if I hadn't set it up on you in advance. Go down the spatial coordinates and sense your danger. I'm afraid your life will be long overdue. In this case, you will not be born in the future. It's really difficult to do." "Huh, what did you say?" Makoto couldn't understand halfway through what he said, thinking that there was something wrong with his ears, and asked hurriedly. "It's nothing." Naruto realized that he was talking too much, and waved his hand hastily. "HMPH, who the hell are you? Wearing a Konoha forehead guard, wearing such a conspicuous royal robe, and protecting me again and again, but you don't want to go back to Konoha. What's your origin?" Makoto felt a little angry when he saw that he was hiding it from himself again. Naruto was a little fortunate. Fortunately, when he was in Rorin, he had already thrown away the cloak with the purpose of the 6th generation, otherwise she would have doubts again. At this time, of course he couldn't tell her the truth. Although he had already told Sarah, Sarah was not a ninja of Konoha and had nothing to do with Konoha's development, so even if he told her it would be fine, but Makoto would not. It's the same, she is Zuoyu's mother, her own mother-in-law. Although she is not married yet. Chapter 242 Women Together. Seeing Naruto go silent again, the feeling of gratitude that had just risen in Makoto's heart was immediately replaced by resentment. He stepped forward and asked, "Hey, Naruto, what are you asking? Who are you? Why do you save me over and over?" Naruto spread his hands. No comment. "You." Makoto was speechless. After a while, Naruto said, "What are you going to do now?" "I don't know," Makoto said, stunned. "The upper echelons of the village have already suspected me. No matter how hard I struggle, I'm afraid I can't escape the fate of being obliterated." But what?" Makoto smiled lightly and looked at him with a strange look in his eyes. "But if you are willing to go back to Konoha with me, with your strength, you must be a very important person in Konoha. As long as you clarify it for me, it will be fine." "This can't be done," Naruto vetoed. "Why?" Makoto stomped his feet anxiously, grabbed his clothes with both hands, looked at him and said anxiously, "It doesn't work, it doesn't work. What secrets do you have?" Naruto shook his head. Makoto's obsession with his own identity is really similar to Sayu. The only difference is that Sayu is obsessed with his own feelings. It seems that the mother and daughter's personalities are still somewhat related. Makoto, the gentle mother figure in the original book, anyway, he didn't see it from the person in front of him. He sighed slightly. "I must never say." Makoto was instantly mad at this incompetent guy, so he pouted and stood aside and ignored him. At this moment, several voices suddenly came from not far away. Naruto's expression froze, and he hurriedly said, "Someone is coming, let's hide first." After saying that, he took Makoto's hand and hid behind a rock. After a while, several ninjas wearing Konoha forehead guards came to the vicinity. One of them said, there has been a battle here. Well, it still looks fierce, at least some of them will be Doden, Earth style, and Kaden, Fire style. This matter must be reported to the captain. Yes. After a few swoops, several people quickly left again. Then did Naruto and Makoto come out of the hiding place. Are those your companions just now? Naruto asked. Makoto nodded. Yeah, unfortunately I can't go back now. Naruto pondered for a while and said, well, just stay by my side for a while and then talk about it. When Makoto heard this, he was slightly taken aback. His face was expressionless, but there was a hint of joy in his eyes unconsciously. In fact, it's not without reason that Naruto took her with him. If she was allowed to return to Konoha, she would definitely be assassinated. At that time, he would never stand idly by and would definitely make a move, and the risk of his exposure would be even greater. Now, in order not to let everyone in Konoha know his identity, he would rather bring Makoto back first, and then let her go back after the 3 stops. Next, Naruto pressed Makoto's shoulders, and the figure disappeared into a golden light. When she reappeared, she was already beside Sarah, and the sky was getting brighter by this time, but she was still sound asleep. After Naruto and the two appeared, Makoto looked at the sleeping beautiful girl curiously. Shish, don't wake her up. I'll go get some food, and you'll take care of it here. Naruto whispered to Makoto. Makoto was taken aback when he heard it, and then he saw Naruto disappear into the woods. She couldn't help muttering, who is this girl? Why does Naruto care about her so much? She couldn't help sitting down beside her and looked at her carefully. Yuhi-colored hair, the upturned nose, the delicate snow-white skin, and the delicate aura she exudes all over her body, all of which show that this girl is not simple. Looking at it, Makoto couldn't help but feel a little lost. Compared with her, he really lacked a lot of things. This inexplicable emotion made her subconsciously startled. Her face suddenly turned a little. Yuhi, what is she doing, really, what are you thinking about? After a while, Naruto came back with some wild fruits and vegetables, and a rabbit in his right hand. As a ninja, Makoto's ability to survive in the wild is not bad. When he saw what Naruto was in his hand, he immediately went up to help him fiddle with it. When Sarah woke up, the Yuhi sun was slowly rising in the sky, and at the same time, a strong aroma of meat floated over. The first time she opened her eyes, she saw Naruto's back sitting by the fire, and she felt a burst of peace in her heart. Naruto, good morning. She stood up and yawned a little, then stretched out her arms and stretched her waist. Her beautiful figure swayed slightly in Naruto, and there was a touch of delicate snow white in her belly. Skin. Under the reflection of the rising sun, the girl's face became Yuhi, and Naruto looked up at her beautiful scenery. His expression was slightly stunned. Who is she? At this moment, Sarah noticed Makoto sitting beside her, and couldn't help but exclaimed. Makoto stood up with a gentle smile on his face and extended his hand to her. Hello little sister, my name is Uchiha Makoto, I'm a ninja from the same village as Naruto. Sarah stayed for a while, and out of courtesy, she also reached out and shook her hand, and then came to Naruto's side. Her soft lips touched Naruto's ear and whispered, Naruto, what the hell is going on? Why did you wake up all night with a big beauty next to you? Naruto smiled slightly. She is indeed a ninja from Konoha village. Yesterday, I encountered some danger and happened to be rescued. She will follow me for a few days now. Oh, Sarah nodded when she figured out what was going on, but she couldn't help but look at Makoto with a hint of hostility in her eyes. Quickly wash up. Naruto handed her a bottle of water. After washing, Naruto handed the roasted rabbit meat to her again. Sarah took over and smiled sweetly, and found that Naruto didn't eat it himself, so she put the rabbit meat to Naruto's mouth and said, Naruto, why would I be embarrassed to eat it alone? You can eat it too. I don't know if it's an illusion. Naruto always feels that Sarah's voice has become boring today, although this change is very good, but Naruto, as a mature man, has traveled through time and space for so many days without touching a woman, and now it was when his physical needs were strong, and Sarah's tired voice and smile made his heart skip a beat. In order not to be embarrassed, Naruto had to take a bite as she asked, and Sarah happily smiled and retracted and ate. Makoto, who was beside him, was speechless.